that you thought would reasonably compromise their ability to obtain what they wanted, what would you do? Would you politely and discreetly correct them and try to set them on the right path? Or would you be quiet and let them make a mistake? The other question is this: if you wanted to sabotage a politician and you saw that they were making mistakes, what would you do? Would you egg on those mistakes? I put to you that everyone out there right now on the anti-MAssie train is actually actively, and I might say deliberately, sabotaging Donald John Trump. There's no video here. What the heck am I doing? I can't go like this the whole time. People, I'm going to go through a few tweets here that I've been engaging with over the weekend. And let me take this out for 1 second. I want to like half put together that meme of who radicalized you, you did. And I want to now slap on the face of Randy Fine, who said in a tweet, not 5 minutes before we went live, if you stand with Nazi lovers, you will pay or you will have to answer for it. And I was like, excuse me, Mr. Randy, is that a threat or a promise? Where was the tweet that he just put out? Right. No, that was this one. Randy Fine. It puts out an actual tweet that says MAssie is helping Nazis run for office. He's a disgrace to the Republican Party, and those who stand with this Nazi lover will have to answer for it. That's a member of the government, or at least maybe one who's aspiring. His account was Vote for Randy Fine. If you stand with a Nazi lover suggesting Thomas Massie is a Nazi lover, what did he say? What was the word he actually said here? You will have to answer for it. You know what this sounds like? I mean, it's driving me crazy. We're going to go and it's going to be the theme of this intro. They're acting like the left. And I don't mean a little bit. I don't mean metaphorically. They are literally adopting the same terminology, the same cancel culture tactics, and the same punch a Nazi type attitude, calls to violence. This, you want to talk about stochastic terrorism? Those who stand with Nazi lovers will have to answer for it. Well, because when you're fighting Nazis, everything and anything is justified. The left had punch a Nazi. We remember that? You know, is it morally okay to punch a Nazi? This was articles in newspapers contemplating, pontificating. Is it okay to punch Nazis? Well, the existential threat that Nazis pose is so proximate and so serious that yes, it is okay to inflict violence on Nazis. Otherwise, they'll genocide you. Randy Fine actually put that tweet out. That is, if anybody had any doubts, sabotage on the conservative movement, sabotage on whatever MAGA is these days, sabotage on the conservative Republican GOP's chances of success in the midterms and chances of success in 2028. The amount of people who over this weekend have been engaging in what I believe is overt, if it's not deliberate, congratulations on being useful idiots. It's egregious sabotage. This one comes courtesy of Vince Langman. I'm putting people on blast today because look, we engage on it on Twitter. I'm sure as sugar going to go over it live so that people can understand. This is not crashing out. I am now putting on blast shameless, evil hypocrites. Period. Vince Langman, who I thought was reasonable, but I've never followed him, I don't think, but we've known each other. We've interacted on X. Put out a tweet that said, and I'm not kidding right here, wow, Kyle Rittenhouse turned out to be a complete douchebag. We should have left him to the liberal wolves in 2020. Now understand what is being said right now. We should have let him either be killed by a pedophile criminal in Kenosha. We should have let him get beaten to death and killed, or we should have let him get railroaded by a politically weaponized legal system because we now disagree with something he did. And by the way, it's not like Kyle Rittenhouse just got busted for like CP or CSAM or dog abuse or woman abuse. It's not like he just got arrested, convicted, or found in a situation as disgusting and compromising as anything that you could maybe say, well, now I got to formally cut ties with this guy altogether. His audacity that in Vince Langman's mind justifies leaving him to the wolves of the left for violence or lawfare is that he had the audacity of coming out in support of Thomas Massie. And by the way, in response to that tweet, because the ones who are the most disgraceful, disgusting hypocrites virtue signal the hardest. It wasn't, it's his pinned tweet, by the way. It's his pinned tweet. Vince Langman says, I don't remember a federal judge apologizing to any January 6 detainees who were held in solitary confinement for months on end with no charges filed against them. I call out hypocrisy where I see it. To which I said, You're going to come out and say we should have left this douchebag to the federal judges, January 6th persecution, if any of the Jan 6ers come out in support of MAssie? I really don't think you appreciate how awful this tweet has made you look, Vince. Beyond disappointing. A man says, yeah, I no longer agree with this guy's politics. We should have let him get beaten, murdered by a leftist mob or jailed for life by a leftist judge. That's what he basically said. So God forbid this guy finds out that any of the Jan 6ers come out in support of MAssie. Well, he would have to come out and then say, we should have left these people in the DC gulags. And it gets worse. I mean, these people, if they wanted to embarrass conservatives, if they wanted to make people not just say, I can't really associate with this group anymore, I've got to run away. If that's what they wanted to do, they couldn't do anything more effective than what they're doing right now. I'm just going to go through one after the other because it's wild. Let me see here. This one was the tactics that they're now using to go after the unholy, the apostates. Owen Schroyer put out a tweet. Let me just make sure that we're looking at the same one. Yet we are. He put out a tweet and it says, what do Lauren Boebert, Thomas Massie, and Marjorie Taylor Greene have in common? They all forced the vote on the Epstein Act. To which an account, Gina Milan, go through her account. This is like, if I think they might actually, I don't know if they're real people, but whatever. So some of them I know are real people, so it's even more depressing. She says in response to this, they all cheated on their spouses. To which I say, liar. There is literally zero evidence Thomas Massie cheated on his wife. By the way, I'm not sure about Lauren Boebert either. There's some rumors. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene, they admitted infidelity. And again, you live with the consequences of your own decisions. But if infidelity is the threshold right now, do you not understand, Gina, you moron, that you're throwing Trump under the bus, maybe not once, maybe not twice, but maybe 3 times? And there is zero evidence that Thomas Massie engaged in infidelity. At worst, and you have to be one hell of a Puritan jackass to think that this is bad. At worst, some people are going to say, he got into a relationship too quickly after his wife died. You fucking idiots have a bigger problem with that than someone who had infidelity with his wife while he was alive. And by the way, just so nobody thinks that I'm throwing Trump under the... infidelity is not something I would suggest, condone, or do, ever. Period. Full stop. When it comes to the support of a politician, if that's your new threshold, then congrats, you just threw Trump under the bus. Unless you're a filthy, raging hypocrite who says, well, when my guy does it, it's fine, but when someone I don't like does it, it's not fine. Congrats. You just actually sabotaged Trump with that post. Moron. But wait, there's more. And it gets worse. Alan Jacoby. This is, and the slurs that come out of these people's mouths after you call them out on it. This was the Vince Langman one. Hold on, we'll get rid of this one. Oh no, there you go. Alan Jacoby comes out and makes fun of PTSD, makes fun of people who have service animals for psychological, other therapeutic reasons, needs. Comes out and says, my emotional support dog told me to support Massie. Using the same effing meme that the left used to mock Kyle Rittenhouse when they said he fake cried on the stand because they don't know what PTSD is. And then people, he doesn't have PTSD. Mother effer, you get assaulted by 3 people and have to take the lives of 3 people, even if they are pedophiles, criminals who are coming to beat the shit out of you. You do that. And then tell me in the future that when you smell the smell of burnt hair in a barbecue, it doesn't immediately bring you back to what the olfactory senses have by way of memory. And you call these people out. I mean, I do call them out. I can't stop calling them out. You are now making fun of veterans. You're making fun of Kyle Rittenhouse, who went through hell because you don't like the fact that he's come out and endorsed a politician that you don't like. And you're using the left's language, the left's memes. And then what do they say? What do they say in response, by the way? It's amazing what they say in response to it. Let me get this over here. It's glorious. Where is it? It's actually stunning to watch people on the so-called right actually literally mocking Kyle with the exact same callous and evil memes of the left. It's astonishing, really. Mocking a man for having a service animal to help deal with his PTSD. Holy hell, Jacoby. What did I say here? You are not representing MAGA. You are making MAGA look just as disgusting as the radical left. You should reflect, this is disgusting. To which he says, go fuck yourself, Mr. Canada. Oh, this is so funny and original. You know who used to call me, go back to Canada? Everyone on the left. And you know who used to say, no, we love him. We're going to keep him here in America. The right. Now it's the right using the left's meme, using the left slurs. I mean, they would call me an anti-Semite for obvious reasons, but they can't. You imagine, like, go back to fucking, go fuck yourself, Mr. Canada. That fat fuck Rittenhouse can fuck right off too. He is a fraud and wouldn't know real PTSD if it hit him in the face. His attorney was a good coach. This is MAGA. I don't want these people representing me ever. I don't want to be associated with these people ever. Really tough. Tuck in your extra chromosome and shut up. Did you just seriously call somebody else a fat fuck? I guess I didn't put you on mute yet, but on mute you go. You're a disgusting human sleeper. What does he say here? Cool, go fuck yourself, you Canadian mutant. This is the side now that calls themselves the MAGA right. Acting like the animals on the left. And why? Because they don't like Thomas Massie. Because they received the orders to, Thomas Massie, bad. Thomas Massie, bad. Plug in the chip, people. It gets worse, if you can believe it. Who's this one here? Red Eagle Politics says Thomas Massie fans are the biggest cultists in politics, and it's not even close, which is ironic because they are always the first to weaponize that label against others. Do you understand what this guy just did right here? He just weaponized the term cultist against the others while saying they're the cultists who weaponized the term cultist against others. These people are so freaking dense. If I didn't know that they were real people, I would swear to you that they are sabotage bots on the internet. To which I say, hey, Red, you support the COVID jab? You support Pfizer? You support immunity for glyphosate manufacturers? You support Lindsey Graham? Please tell me just how stupid you are. And like I say, this is not criticism to say, well, now we must abandon everything that Trump has ever done because we disagree with him on certain key issues. You put your pressure out there and you disagree on it. Unless you are a sycophant idiot now, what was his name? Red Alert, whatever the hell your name was, and you have to agree with, you like the jab, go get the booster. Oh, you like glyphosate? Go eat some more. Oh, you like Lindsey Graham? Go stroke the war horse back. Oh, you like Pfizer renewals now? Go get it. These people have forgotten all of their principles, and they literally betray them in the most egregious, in-your-face manners, as if the internet is not forever, as if it's literally not there. Now, by the way, they are celebrating Ed Galleran's service. But, when it came to Joe Kent's service, well, Joe Kent is a traitor. And by the way, there's a presumptive respect for anybody who has ever served left or right. Tammy Duckworth served. There's a presumptive respect for that. She lost her legs. She suffered tremendous consequences. She served. There's a presumptive respect for that. It doesn't mean that you go and agree with all their politics, because someone who went to wars that might have been potentially not useless wars, but potentially ill-advised wars, based on lies wars, who then wants to send other people's children to future wars after they lost their own legs in a war that could have been or ought to have been avoided. Well, you might question their judgment, but you don't question their sacrifice for country. But you do when you don't like the person. What was this guy? Pro-America. Listen to this guy. Ed Galleran has 7 tours with the Navy SEAL Team 6. This man is an American hero. He's everything do-nothing Thomas Massie is not. I'll bring up the one that won't make you angry first. To which he said, in respect of Joe Kent, who had 11 combat tours, I find it really disgusting that Joe Kent would make up a lie about Charlie Kirk. He looked me directly in the eyes and said, Joe, promise me you'll stop the war in Iran. Who the fuck are you to say what Joe Kent and Charlie Kirk discussed? Oh, it's a lie. This guy says it's a lie because, he knows now. How corny and ridiculous is that? Does anyone believe that? I'm just asking questions. He didn't mention any of that in his resignation letter. Nope, in his resignation letter, he made up lies about his dead wife. Now, his dead wife, by the way, who died, I think she was a translator, who died, if I'm not mistaken, also in service. Now he's making up, mocking his dead wife. Oh, wait a minute. Who was doing that about Erica Kirk? Mocking her grieving process. Now they go and they're going to mock this guy. Now making up lies about another dead person. I'm getting really fed up with liars and grifters like Candace Owens and Joe Kent trying to hijack the legacy of a great man like Charlie Kirk. Joe Kent is a pathological liar and a piece of trash with 11 combat tours. Oh, and by the way, putting up the smiling emojis, laughing emojis. Trump just said he only gave Joe Kent a job because he felt bad his wife died and he lost 2 congressional races. 3 emoji faces. These people are mocking other people's suffering. They are abandoning the most basic forms of consistency, which is, if infidelity is bad and you think it's bad, it's always bad. And if you think it's bad, don't bring it up against a guy when your guy did it. It is always bad, by the way. It's not always disqualifying. And if it's not disqualifying for your guy, but it is disqualifying for others, even though there's zero evidence of it, you might want to think about that line of attack. If service is good and service makes someone a hero, you might want to think about not having a total blindside double standard in terms of Joe Kent's service being disregarded. He's a pathological liar. And Ed Gallerin, who deserves, the funny thing is, I got nothing against Ed Gallerin that I know of, except for the fact that he refused to debate Thomas Massie and then had the stupidest excuse, why not? I'm debating him right now. No, you're not. But if you're going to attack someone, make sure that it's not the exact same line of attack that others could and would and did use against your guy. If you're going to now adopt the left's tactics, understand that you are, in fact, no better than the left. And I could go on. But this has made it impossible to even be associated with these people who are, as far as I'm concerned, it is truly demonic. To mock somebody, to laugh at somebody who served, whose wife died in service, because you don't like his politics, to make fun of someone's trauma, which is objective, black and white, faking his trauma. Who said that one? Who was the one that it was Jacoby. To make fun of someone's trauma, it makes you an actual demon, like an actual demon in human form. So congratulations. And above all else, it destroys any progress you could have hoped to have made. It alienates not just your enemies, but anybody who says, I'm not going to be associated with people who mock people whose wives died in war, who accuse people of having infidelity with no evidence whatsoever, who accuse people of leaking classified information and being traitors with zero evidence whatsoever. I'm not going to be associated with any of those. And you do it like a bunch of starlings on cue while accusing other people of getting paid to shill for their political candidate. You should all be ashamed of yourselves. And you should understand that you are doing borderline, if not already irreparable harm to Trump's MAGA, MAHA conservative movement. And if your goal was to alienate everybody and anybody who ever had anything to do with this coalition, congratulations, you're doing it. And you can look at what happens in 2026 and 2028, and you can blame those who are raising the flags, or you can understand you did it. And I'm beginning to think in very, very COINTELPRO type terms, you're doing it on purpose because Trump is not running again. And so the idea of blowing up the coalition, humiliating some of the most ardent supporters of this movement so you can get your little Twitter click gotchas. I don't know how much monetization these guys get on X. You're destroying the movement. You are basically making sure to maximize the odds of Democrats taking over in 2026 and 2028. And if that was your goal, congrats. You literally could have done nothing better to make that happen. End of intro rant. Ladies and gentlemen, how goes the battle? I'm also in a bit of a bad mood. I got a bit of a cold. Who gets a cold in Florida in the month of May? Got a sore throat. My wife is on a conference somewhere. I got 3 kids. I was telling Robert before we went live, the life of an adult or a parent in America in particular, because we're in a city that's not, you don't get around on bike unless you want to get run over by a geriatric who can't see over the steering wheel, or these young punks who drive their Honda Civics like they're on an F1. You don't ride bikes here. You got to drive everywhere. I spend the better part of a day driving children to and from events. Luckily, I can listen to podcasts. I can listen to Barnes's Bourbon with Barnes, as I did. Well, I did that actually the other day, and I caught up on another one. This is the Friday night Viva and Barnes Law for the People show. We are live across all platforms. CommieTube, vivabarneslaw.locals.com, the best locals community on earth, Rumble, and X. Nobody really cares about X. And we're going to have a great show tonight, as always. But now let me bring up some of the Rumble rants. I do my best to get to all the Rumble rants. The CommieTube ones are a little bit more difficult because they don't come up through Rumble Studio yet. And so if I miss any of those and you're going to be upset that I missed it, don't give it and then complain that I didn't read it. Because it makes me feel bad. I don't like anybody feeling like they've been grifted, whatever the heck the words are. But the ones on Rumble are very easy because I can cash them now. Lucy the Dog says, true MAGA patriots don't use foul language unless absolutely necessary or never as the Lord commanded. KCap1234 says, I think there were witnesses to Charlie saying that to Joe Kent. West Wing isn't that big. Crammed hallways. Pretty sure Bannon was a few feet away from Charlie. They won't believe Bannon either. Hans One Pack says, could it be he was laughing at his 2 failed congressional attempts? It's you know what? It could be, but that's why you take a step back from your hatred and you say, how could this tweet be misinterpreted? You don't put laughing emojis in the context of a wife who died. I think it was Syria. You don't do it. But also, given the foul evil coming out of that account, no, they're just laughing at other people's misery. That's all that they're doing. Joden80 says, anyone that is still with Trump MAGA and not America first, America only, is a Rhett, ampersand, RD, ape. Go join the Democrats where you belong. Stop kissing your dogs. That way you don't get a disease in your throat. Hands over. No. It has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with my dog's beautiful face. Yeah, and let's go see what we got going over on vivabarneslaw.locals.com until Barnes gets in here, and we're going to have one hell of a show. Holy sweet merciful goodness. Bringing that here. Let's go to the top here. Jonathan Toby says, to Barnes, what are your updated odds at a return to kinetic conflict in Iran versus a taco and full exit soon? How much impact will Thomas Massie's victory on Tuesday? Let us, put the meme out there. I would have never said, I hope Thomas Massie gets elected. If this campaign against Thomas Massie succeeds, it'll be arguably worse than the 2020 election theft, because this will have been done under color of law. Chris Kraft says, for the Bill Brown 2 was right again, Jar. Chris Kraft, thank you very much. Jonathan Toby, will Trump be throwing a drunken temper tantrum once Massey wins, similar to Hillary Clinton? No, he won't. Bigfoot, getting out of Commie Canada for a few weeks, heading to Upper Michigan. Very nice. In our RV to the thumb. That's going to be me. Going to taste some, I saw parasites there. Pasties and visit Snowmobile Museum. It's not too late. Send Massey some money, says Apismelifera. And we got Bill Brown. I wouldn't go to war again, as I have done, to protect some lousy investment of the bankers. There are only two things we should fight for. One is the defense of our homes, and the other is the Bill of Rights. War for any other reason is simply a racket, and that was Major General Smedley Butler in his speech. Bill Brown wanted, let's see this one here, wants Epstein's friends in handcuffs, funded by Epstein's friends. Viva! What you don't understand is how good ex-Navy SEALs are at members of the House of Representatives. Don't you remember One-Eyed Dan McCain? And then we got Viva. Part of what you have a problem with is that all groups have multiple parts. In this case, there are those who created the principal standards out of principles and those that simply parrot the principled arguments for tribal clout. These situations tell you just who is who, since the principled remain principled and tribal parrots then changed their tune with less comprehension than a parrot. You're right. I mean, the amount of people I've now unfollowed. Oh, Robert's in the backdrop and I didn't see him there. Robert, I'm sorry. The amount of people, I don't make the announcements about unfollowing people, but I'm unfollowing. I don't want to see this toxic shit coming from anybody. It makes me sick. It makes me angry. And, Robert, sir, how goes the battle?
Good. I'm up here in Nashville, Tennessee. I got some court hearings tomorrow. Some big private capital hedge fund folks are trying to steal and rob a local Tennessee business and crush it. So here, there, then may make it up Tuesday to Covington, Kentucky, the old stomping grounds of the old Covington Kid suit, where I met a young idealistic congressman by the name of Thomas Massey. Tonight's top topics, number one voted on topic is what is going to happen in that Tuesday primary. Will we see the biggest upset against the odds in the history of congressional history? We'll do a deep dive breakdown of the Thomas Massey race. The second top topic, the Fourth Amendment. What does it mean in the context of this flock camera companies that are basically taking a vehicle fingerprint of your vehicle and tracking it and tracing it everywhere, and then storing it to give it to other people? At some point, does the Fourth Amendment step in? That was a popular question on the vivabarneslaw.locals.com board. And it correlates to another Fourth Amendment question. What about these internet trackers that got their little forensic fingerprints tracking, let's say they're tracking Special Ed Gayrain from who's trying to take away Mr. Massey's seat. They might think he loves OnlyFans because he keeps his eyes on those OnlyFans models and starts following them on Instagram until he gets caught. Mr. Moral. But what about, do you have a right to sue for privacy violations under those circumstances? The other topics, Tina Peters finally gets at least a little bit of justice. The Chud the Builder, who I have no idea who he is, but apparently a lot of other people know who he is. So does he have a self-defense under Tennessee law? The SCOTUS, we've got an arbitration decision, a corporate immunity decision that had big impact on the trucking industry concerning federal preemption. We had a big abortion decision, and we've got all the pending cases. We're only about, a couple of weeks away from when the docket's supposed to be wrapped up at SCOTUS, and we've got like 20 big cases they haven't managed to issue a ruling on. We'll give a sneak preview on some of the big ones. Then we've got, when is a gun crime a Second Amendment violation, and when do you have a right to a justification defense based on the Second Amendment? That went up before the First Circuit Court of Appeals. In the name of green energy, they're trying to use the requirements for green energy to impose speech codes. When does that violate the First Amendment? A framed man, a guy who was totally framed for a murder he didn't commit because the cop was scared of the Mexican cartels, finally gets freed and finally gets to sue and finally gets a little bit of relief and remedy. The Federal Reserve is all out screwing over more banks. For all those people out there, if you've ever debated somebody that said that the individual reserve banks, not the Board of Governors, not the Open Market Committee, but the individual reserve banks that make up the Federal Reserve are privately owned and have private shareholders and are privately controlled. Well, now you can quote a federal court case that says exactly that when they want to say you got some sort of kooky conspiracy theory going. We've got DEI about the DIE in the Twin Cities. We've got James O'Keefe winning again for the First Amendment about the right for undercover journalism. Relates, by the way, to a case that I was involved in some years ago. And the EU, back to a case we weren't able to get to last week, because for the record, my evil twin, Paul, might have said some things about Dave Rubin. I disown all those things. My evil twin, Paul, comes in and he sneaks in here and he says all these things. And I have no idea. And for proof of it, you can find Alan Dershowitz referring to my evil twin, Paul, in a debate with Viva Frei. Hopefully this time we won't get cut off when we go to the premium section.
Robert, okay, so let's start with the Thomas Massie one because we're all following it. The markets are, as far as I'm concerned, irrelevant, even except for what might have been market manipulation throughout last week with some news or hit campaign that came out against
and some polls. There's only one legit pollster that's been polling this district. Everybody else, let's just say, has other motives in play.
There was a poll that came out that radically changed. It came out in conjunction with the smear campaign by Cynthia West, who's been oddly quiet. I think she went on with Laura Loomer, but I don't know if that's been published yet, or I certainly haven't seen it. But she's been rather quiet since every time she keeps talking about the alleged misconduct. It only seems to even remotely go back to, what's her name, Sparts, and has nothing to do with Thomas Massie. The markets shifted for a moment, went back, but now they're back to 50-50 or maybe 53-47 in favor of Gail Rain. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, I know from the Bourbon with Barnes late last week, I guess Thursday, whatever, you were very optimistic. I don't know if you're still as optimistic. Are they going to successfully steal this primary? And what do people need to be worried about if they are inclined to be worried about, slow counting ballots, finding bags and things like this? What's the chance of chicanery at that level of procedural level?
So the Thomas Massie race, the Kentucky 4th Congressional District, includes these sort of Kentucky bedroom suburbs of Cincinnati, some of the suburbs of Louisville, a little bit extended exurbs of Lexington, and then a large swath. Fort Mitchell is located in the district. The Cincinnati Airport is located in Thomas Massie's district because it's actually in Kentucky. And then some old rural, depending on which part you're in. So where Massie grew up, I think it's Appalachia. Where I grew up, southern part, it's Appalachia. So it depends on which part of Appalachia you grew up in as to how you pronounce that region of the country. He is the congressional underdog of the century, probably the congressional underdog of all time. There has never been this much money spent against a single candidate for elected office at the federal level in American history on a per capita, per voter basis. To give people an idea, basically $25 million plus is being spent against Thomas Massie in that district, almost all of which come from donors who live outside the district, almost all of which come from donors who have tight ties to foreign nations, including double citizenships and including citizenship in foreign nations. With big ties to the donor class in the District of Columbia. They are also tied in that respect. So one, he's got, to give you an idea, on a per capita per voter basis, about $200 per expected voter is being spent against Thomas Massie.
Jeez Louie. That is
That is approximately 20 to 50 times more than has been spent against Donald Trump in his entire political career for more than a decade on a per voter basis. The average voter in America has seen $2 worth of negative materials about Donald Trump over a decade plus. And the average voter, Republican primary voter in Massie's district has seen over $200 worth. It is unheard of. Nothing like this has ever happened in American political history. This amount of money being spent against one guy.
If I may just ask some steelman questions, the argument's going to be, well, the aggregate amount that they're spending is still relatively inconsequential. It just happens to be in a district that they haven't spent this much money on to begin with, but 25 million to multi-billionaires is, a drop.
Well, the way to think of it is there's 435 congressional districts, and his is one of the cheapest. So take that 25 million, multiply it times about 500, and that's what you would have it in. The way I've been trying to compare is think of it as a nationwide primary. What would this be the equivalent of to get an idea? Because 25 million doesn't sound that much in the context of American politics until you realize how much is being spent for so few voters. You're only talking about 100,000 or so voters. On the high side, 120,000 voters. That's what I'm talking about. You're $200 a voter being spent. This is unheard of in American politics. At any level, local level, federal level, any level, this amount of money has never been spent per voter ever in American history against a primary candidate. That's number one. Then number two, he has the president of the United States with all of the capital that comes with it, all the political capital. He owns a major social media platform for the right, which is Truth, the Truth platform, which about a third to half of Republican voters use at some level. And he has the biggest, strongest base in a district that is designed for Trump, because in the current Trump, not the old Trump, but the current Trump. The current Trump base is a boomer conservative, someone that's over 62, that is a self-identified registered Republican, identifies as a partisan Republican, identifies as a conservative, and their primary news source is Fox News. So sometimes boomers get mad when I talk about boomer cons. I'm talking about a very specific group, not all boomers by any stretch of the imagination. So the boomer con audience is up to half of the electorate in this district. Now, I don't think it's going to be that high this time. We'll get to that in a second. But so you're basically talking about Trump's current base, the Fox News current base, the donor class current base. This district is rigged in that direction. So you have the most money ever being spent ever in the history of politics on a per voter, per capita basis. You have the incumbent president of the United States going after him who has spent more political capital against Thomas Massie than he has against any other Republican candidate in history for any primary. In fact, about a 10x ratio. He didn't even go after Cassidy that much, once or twice when Cassidy lost last night in the Louisiana primary. Instead, by contrast, he's going after Massie on an hourly basis today. He is sending the Secretary of War, Hegseth, down to a personal political rally for, by the way, complete criminal violation of the Hatch Act. But that's who Hegseth is. He doesn't care about the law.
But hold on. So I had heard that there were exceptions for members of the Department of Defense in it. I couldn't pretend to know what they are, but
you can't use your title. And he put his title in the political rally roster. That's what you can't do. You could say Pete Hegseth is coming in. That's fine. You can't say War Secretary Hegseth is coming in. That's leveraging the power of the federal government for a candidate. That's exactly what the Hatch Act was intended to prohibit. But that's the pressure coming in against Massie. But that's not it. Not only the record-setting money to a degree that's 10x, 20x, 50x, 100x, any kind of comparison ever. The incumbent president of his own party coming in and beating the dickens out of him with an electorate that is designed because independents can't vote. People who didn't register as Republicans before a certain date in April can't vote. So it's a very limited, restricted audience that's aligned against Massie for these donors, for President Trump. But that's not it. Then you have complete blackout by Fox News. For a year, Fox News will not cover Thomas Massie in any favorable light, won't interview him at all. You have Fox News and Rupert Murdoch putting his entire political power against this guy, against one little guy from Kentucky, from northern Kentucky. So this would be the upset of all upsets for him to overcome this amount of money being spent against him, this amount of media influence being orchestrated against him, and the incumbent president of the United States coming down on him in a district designed to defeat him. So can he pull off the shocking upset? The little nerd from poor Appalachia who went to MIT, who designed his own patents, created his own business, built his own house, runs his own farm, who is opposed by big pharma, big ag, big tech, big business, big media, and the Israel lobby, and the military industrial complex, and the DC lobbyists all combined. The entire political establishment despises Thomas Massie. Why is that? Number one sponsor of food freedom, the right to buy food directly from the farmer without the control of the federal government, without getting a political permission slip from an inspector or regulator from the federal government. Number one promoter of food freedom for individual farmers and individual people against the big ag food cartels. Thomas Massie, his prime act is about to pass the House, already passed the House, about to pass the Senate, about to go into law. Number one advocate of medical freedom, number one person in the House who went after Anthony Fauci. Number one person in the House who went after mask mandates. Number one person in the House who went after vaccine mandates. Number one person in the House who is trying to reverse the vaccine mandates by the federal government. Number one person in the House said we cannot afford inflationary spending in the so-called CARES Act. That's going to be one big fraud scheme. All the way across the board, Massie, Massie, Massie. Now you go to political freedom, issues of opposition to the surveillance state, opposition to the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, warrantless spying on us, opposition to the federal government passing laws that President Trump signed, by the way, that allow the federal government to turn your car off if they don't like the way you're driving, an automatic shutoff in all cars designed since 2027. Number one opponent of that, Thomas Massie. Number one opponent of FISA, Thomas Massie. Number one opponent of the central bank digital currency, Thomas Massie. Then let's talk about financial freedom. The number one advocate of protecting crypto from the incursion and intrusions of the SEC. Number one advocate for auditing the Federal Reserve and for taking away the Federal Reserve's monopoly of political power in certain financial sectors. Number one advocate for ordinary people to get direct access to capital free of the corrupted crony capitalistic system. Thomas Massie, Thomas Massie, Thomas Massie. So the number one person for the Epstein Files Transparency Act, he's the actual author of the Epstein Files Transparency Act, Thomas Massie. Number one opponent to endless wars, Thomas Massie. Number one opponent to the bloat of the military industrial complex, Thomas Massie. So financial freedom, political freedom, medical freedom, food freedom, freedom from future endless wars, foreign wars, Massie, 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 Massie. That's why the entire establishment is organized to defeat him. The second thing that they want to show in this campaign is they can pick an empty suit who will run from his basement worse than Joe Biden, which is what Special Ed Gay Rain has done. He has refused every single debate. For all these people that talk big online, well, why is your candidate so afraid of a debate in front of elementary school children, in front of middle schoolers, in front of college students, in front of anybody in the media, left, right, or otherwise? Massie said, look, your campaign manager can be the person doing the debate, and I'll appear at the debate. And Special Ed refused to even do it then. He's canceling events. He's literally runs from questions from grandmas. Grandma's asking questions, and he starts running away. The goal is to show the American people what a joke they are. The goal is to say, see, American people, we can buy you. We can own you. We can get you to vote for the most rhino of rhinos and get you to seal clap it all the way through. We can get you to oppose the only congressman who stood up for the things you claim to stand for, and to vote for literally an empty suit who will hide in a basement rather than debate the subjects and topics of the issues in the day. If you don't like Thomas Massie, fine. Why is your candidate scared of a debate then? Shouldn't it be so easy to discuss the topics? Shouldn't it be so easy to expose him? Even Donald Trump is too big of a pussy to debate Thomas Massie in person. That's the reality, because they know they're the fakes, they're the phonies, they're the frauds. The real deal is Thomas Massie. Ask Grok. Say if we designed a constitution and it looked like a member of Congress Who in Congress today looks most like a physical manifestation of the Constitution? The answer is Thomas Massie. So can Massie win? This is going to be a question of the voters. Are voters the kind of schnooks, the kind of suckers, the kind of saps the Washington political establishment thinks they are and wants to prove they are in this campaign? Are they somebody who just does what dear leader tells them to do? Are they somebody who has no principles at all, but is simply part of a cult of personality or party? Are they someone who just listens to what Fox News tells them to do? Or can they do their own independent investigation and research? Don't take my word for it. You can just look at the fact that Gay Rain is not willing to debate anybody, but just research it yourself. Find out the truth yourself, and you can find it out. This is about the quality of the voter, the conscience, the mind, and the soul of the voter. Can they look past the Fox News, past the big money, past all the political ads and radio ads and TV ads and YouTube ads and all the mailers and all the calls and all the texts? Can they look past that, get out to vote, and express what they believe on their principles? Because in this district, there is a long history of independent representation. This is the same state that sent Rand Paul to the Senate, which apparently Trump isn't thinking through all the way when he keeps comparing Massie to Rand Paul. Rand Paul is a lot more popular in Kentucky than your boy, Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, the soon-to-be ex-senator from Kentucky. So if Trump can't win in this election with a race as closely rigged as you could possibly have it in terms of the demographics of the voter base, in terms of the media influence, in terms of all the money, in terms of all the social media platforms, Elon Musk wussed out. He promised to back Massie, but even he was scared to challenge this institutional power in D.C. Hiding in a little corner was Elon Musk. When it came time to put his money where his mouth was. So we're going to find out whether the ordinary, everyday people of Kentucky are not as susceptible, are not the suckers and saps the Washington establishment crowd thinks they are. And now for the people worried about election fornication, there's almost no mail-in balloting in Kentucky. It's all either in-person early voting or in-person election day. So their ability to steal it the old-fashioned way is extremely limited. They're going to have to earn it by stealing it a different way, which is with the massive amounts of money, the media monopoly, with the power of the White House. Look at Trump. He's going after Congresswoman Boebert just because she shows up in Kentucky with Thomas Massie, recognizing what a true conscientious Congressman Thomas Massie is. So if you care about any of the issues a lot of people out there claim to care about, like opposition to war, opposition to foreign aid, opposition to bloated budgets, opposition to the surveillance state, opposition to medical impositions, opposition to big ag, big media, big food, the big pharma controlling and dictating our lives. You have one advocate above all, one advocate more respected than anybody on the Hill on every single one of those issues, and his name is Thomas Massie. So you can go to MassieMoneyBomb.com if you want to add a little contribution, put your 2 cents in. Congressman Massie goes through and reads those on a daily basis. So you can put in a little comment if you donate $2, $4, $10, whatever it is you can afford. Let your voice be heard. And if you know anybody in that district, you live in that district, get out to vote on Tuesday. Vote, 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 vote. Tell your friends to vote. Get everybody else to vote. If they're too dumb that they're supporting special ed, tell them Election Day is next Tuesday. But for everybody else, get them out there, get them out there, get them out there. Because this is the most important election in recent modern American congressional history, is re-electing Thomas Massie.
And let me just make sure that Robert doesn't face the Douglas Mackey persecution for his clear joke, people. The election is don't. But now, hold on, Robert. I got a few follow-up questions with that. The one thing I want to do is just show the hard evidence of gall rain, showing the gall of not. Listen, I won't play the whole thing, but listen to this.
He took the press out of the middle and talked right to the people. What did President Trump do? What did Galbraith do? I'm going to talk right to you. I ain't scared enough. You think I lack for courage? In fact, they had to hog tie me from taking that bull on. So there ain't no money in it. The New York Times is going to show up, and all they're going to print is, if you like your doctor, you can keep it. Whatever they say, they're going to call it the gospel. You ain't going to hear another word about it. So as you might guess, I'm not shy about courage about nothing. In terms of that.
But you haven't debated him.
I'm debating him right now, young
No,
man.
you're
I'm
not.
glad you brought
You're
that
not
up.
I'm
debating.
debating him.
He said 15
You're
years.
giving a bunch of platitudes. You're not explaining anything. You've not gone toe to toe with the congressman.
Yes, ma'am.
You're
Yes,
not
sir.
explaining
Going
your
toe-to-toe with him
differences.
right now.
You're not doing anything. You're just.
This is at his own event. I'm debating him right now. No, you're not. My
Yeah.
goodness. Now,
That's Kentucky at the show me state. So the president thinks his voters are a bunch of suckers and saps. He can tell them what to do, and they'll line up like North Korea, dear leader, and they'll just seal clap on the way through. He thinks the people of northern Kentucky ain't bright enough to make up their own mind, ain't strong enough to act on their own will. And I think on Tuesday, the president of the United States, Washington, D.C., all the lobbyists on K Street, all the military-industrial complex boys, all the war whores, all the big pharma, big ag folks are in for a little Kentucky-sized surprise.
One other thing, Robert. So someone I noticed in the chat, it said, didn't he, being MAssie, tank the SAVE Act? And my
Just the
answer,
opposite. He fought for the SAVE Act beforehand, in the middle, and at the end. Tried to get it through multiple levels and multiple mechanisms, multiple means. The person who tanked the SAVE Act is Donald John Trump, who decided the war in Iran mattered more, and he decided to keep his mouth shut about putting John Thune in power in the first place, which some of us told him not to do, including MAssie. Thune is the one who has sabotaged the SAVE Act. Everybody and their brother knows it. And it is Trump who has not held Thune's feet to the fire because he's too busy figuring out another foreign nation to invade.
the other question I had, one of the accusations I frequently see is that Thomas Massie, because when everyone say, well, you're complaining about AIPAC funding the opposition to
the
Massie.
American Israeli Political Action Committee. If you want a foreign nation to buy our congressman, let Thomas Massie lose on Tuesday.
But the flip side is, and I think is I feel that it's not true, but feelings mean nothing. Where they say, well, he is getting donations from the Muslim Brotherhood, from now. I mean, for the life of me, I can't come out and definitively say it's a stupid thing. I mean, you can't get money from a terrorist organization.
No.
All the claims don't hold water. But what of the argument that Thomas Massie is receiving funding from who? They say the Muslim Brotherhood was one. They go with other PAC,
Well, they
political
try to
action
claim
committees.
foreigners, but all the foreign influence is on the other side of the aisle. So the average donation to Thomas Massie is less than $100. He has 100 times more donors from Kentucky than Gay Rain does. He's got more small donors by far than Gay Rain does. From an individual contributor basis, he's raised 3 times more than Gay Rain has. The Gay Rain's money all comes from PACs, and the PACs are overwhelmingly with 3 big Wall Streeters who have deep ties to to AIPAC. This also includes the Republican Jewish Coalition, who's writing huge checks against him, and includes PACs that have connections to China running against Thomas Massie. Because the China would like to buy up all our farmland. The president was on Sean Hannity this week saying, "Whoop-de-doo, come on in, China, buy all of our farmland that you want, bring in all your students that you want." What a version of MAGA that is. But why is it they don't trust Massie? Because Massie's for American farmers controlling American farmland. That's why. So all the foreign money, and so they have to, a lot of confession through projection. Take that scam artist, Red Eagle politics. Some of these guys are all Barris wannabes. So they've sucked up to Barris. They've begged Richard Barris to give them free polling intel and information. Tell us how to poll, please, Richard. And Richard's taking his time out to deal with these guys. Thought they were, legit up and up. And then all they've done is defame and libel him ever since. Barris is the only legitimate pollster. Yeah, Qantas, you're not in that category. I'm aware of what your boss is doing trading on certain markets and what you're up to. So and when you take certain payoffs from certain people connected to the White House, you lose credibility, bro. The only person that's done independent polling that is trustworthy in this district, that has been spending money out of his own pocket to do it, that is risking his public reputation to do it, is Richard Barris, the most accurate pollster going on a decade plus, People's Pundit Daily. He has Massie up by 1 to 2 points and trending in Massie's direction. There are people who are manipulated. There's a company that's SoCal Strategies put out a poll. Let's just say a lot of these same people supporting these polls call Barris fake, which is just ridiculous if you understand anything about how much he puts into this, which tells me They're probably doing fake polls.
Robert,
Coming up with numbers like 7. Did they pretend they know how the voting shares work? Young people actually do tend to vote in this district. Northern Kentucky University's in this district. Thomas More University's in this district. Northern Kentucky University has 16,000 students. I know this district frontwards and backwards. For reasons of wanting Thomas Massie to win and prevail in this district because of how important he is to the food freedom, political freedom, medical freedom, financial freedom fight. I've known it firsthand for the better part of a decade. No, there was only one member of Congress that came to bat for Amos Miller when the whole world was trying to kill him and crush him. Donald Trump was too busy doing parties in Mar-a-Lago to care about the Amish, even though the Amish went to great bat to get him elected in 2024. That's just who Donald Trump is these days. The one congressman who came to his defense was Thomas Massie. That was the one who publicly risked his own reputation to stand up for Amos Miller. And it mattered tremendously in all the courts up there in Pennsylvania who paid attention to the Ag Committee chairman saying, hey, this looks wrong to me, what's going on here? This told people that case wasn't what they thought it was. So that's who Thomas Massie is. When I was representing the Covington kids against them getting libeled by the whole political machine, that corrupt hack Mitch McConnell and his little bitch Scott Jennings were running around running interference for the people who were libeling the Covington kids. Nick Salmon's always wanted to be part of part of that political establishment, Mitch McConnell crew. So that's where he is in this race. All the other Covington kids, didn't have anybody fighting for them publicly until I got involved. And the only member of Congress who was willing to stand up for them right away, Thomas Massie. So that's how the difference made. January 6th, who's exposing the fact that they're setting up a patsy as the pipe bomber to cover up for the CIA? Thomas Massie. Who is it the one that went to defend Steve Baker and the independent investigative journalist, number one congressman doing so? Thomas Massie. Who is it that was exposing January 6th as an inside job from the get-go? Thomas Massie. Who is it that was the guy exposing everything that happened with Russiagate is fake from the get-go? Thomas Massie. Who said it was wrong the way President Trump was being persecuted in lawfare indictments and impeachments and investigations? Thomas Massie, Thomas Massie, Thomas Massie. Who exposed what a fake fraud Russiagate was from the inception? Thomas Massie. Who exposed Anthony Fauci and continues to? Thomas Massie. If you're opposed to Thomas Massie, you're admitting you're illiterate. You're admitting that you probably shouldn't vote because you're too dumb and too uninformed to do so. Unless you're a war whore neocon like Lady Lindsey Graham and Mark Levin and Ben Shapiro. Everybody else who cares about anything that used to be what MAGA was once Thomas Massie elected, if you care about any liberty movement, freedom movement, or you just care about us representing ourselves in Congress, not letting foreign lobbies buy our members of Congress, you want Thomas Massie to win on Tuesday night.
Let me bring this one up here because I think this is another one where I could offer my retort, but I won't. You cannot claim, this is from Jeffrey3425, that Massie champions political freedom when he advocates the suppression of American voters and the prosperity of the middle class through his championing of open borders. All other concerns...
Completely fake. So you're a fraud, you're a fake, you're phony,
you're
too stupid. All these people bragging about their stupidity online. Thomas Massie was the leader for the border wall. Thomas Massie was the one trying to get it through in 2017, 2018, when Paul Ryan was sabotaging it and Trump was going along with Paul Ryan sabotaging it. Massie has long opposed any form of open borders, long supported all kinds of immigration restrictions and restraints, wanted to take the DOJ bills, including the DOJ bills gutting illicit programs for illegal immigrants, and wanted to make them congressional law. It was Donald Trump's pal, the Speaker of the House, who sabotaged it. So anybody claiming he's for open borders is a liar.
No, but not just that. Like it was only Trump who was talking about amnesty for the hospitality, for agricultural.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which Massie's been opposed to amnesty at any level. It's Trump talking about amnesty for big ag, and Trump talking about amnesty for the whole hospitality industry. It's Donald Trump talking about let's call ICE nice instead. That is Trump sabotaging you, Trump betraying you, but you can't admit that. So you got to lie about Massie instead in order to feel good about yourself for getting snookered by Donald Trump, who has decided to take us all as suckers the last 6 months.
Super Buff Shaft says, who is the one that told everyone about the biggest real forensic audit 5 years ago, exposing mass corruption, and to interview the auditor, Jovan Blitzer? Me, still waiting. Okay, sorry. I thought that was going to be on top. I'm screenshotting it. Hans One Pack says 61% of MAssie funding is from large individual donors. I fact check it. Yeah. So what does it say here? It says 61% comes from people who donate $3,000. I mean, this is where people like don't distinguish between PACs and individuals maxing out their donations. $3,000.
99.9% of the money opposed to him comes from people donating 6 figures or more to big PACs.
But also, like the small individual contributions, 36% is under $200. So that's not an own. Like when you say
that's extraordinary, given modern campaigns. Donald Trump got a lot more of his campaign money from big donors than Thomas Massie did.
Viva, can I make my I told you so dance when Trump was threatening Greenland and invading South America, and I said he was swelling? Sean 47. King, I don't know what that means. King of Biltong says, this isn't just biltong, it's premium meat, real craftsmanship, and clean ingredients. All made in-house, sold direct. Welcome to BiltongUSA.com. Code Barnes for 10% off. Cultivated Mind says, re-elect Thomas Massie. Thank you very much, Cultivated Mind. I believe after Trump, if Vance is not in and Warmonger Rubio is, time for America First Party, says Sean 487. Hans One Pack says it has nothing to do with his stance on spending on food freedom or personal freedom, but when you call someone part of the Epstein class, don't be surprised when they come after you. Well, how about you just don't screw up on the Epstein release, and so that people don't have even if it's an untenable argument, at least to call the war in Iran a distraction from the bungled. Like, how about don't screw up? And then it doesn't become an issue. That you don't force your wife to come out and say this.
You don't want to be part. By the way, what he said is he's defending people in the Epstein class. That person's misunderstanding once again what Matt said.
Well, I asked Mays, Robert. I asked Mays, that account, that does good work on X, said, when you spend the last 9 months calling Trump a pedophile, expect it. And I said, when? I mean, I wasn't even an aggressive. Like, when? Oh, well, he said that he's defending the Epstein class. That's not calling someone a pedophile. No. So they make up crap to justify their own hatred. Basically.
And again, it's Donald Trump's fault that he chose to defend and try to cover up for the Epstein class. It's Donald Trump's fault he's governing with and by and for the Epstein class. That's Donald Trump's fault. Quit pretending it's Thomas Massie's fault for pointing it out.
I want to see if Hans One Pack says the vast majority of Massie's donations are from out of state.
Well, of course, because you have small donors from all over the place. So he still is getting far more donors from from Kentucky and in his district than his opponent is. So it's like if you're running, is there the amount of money to raise within his district from small donors?
No, if I'm looking at Larry Sharp, he's taking money from across the country. That's not a flaw. Okay. Well, so
again, by comparison, it's like but who is the other candidate? Oh, the other candidate's getting all of his money from outside the district. And for people who are loyal to foreign countries, namely Israel, instead of the United States.
What's terrible is people are going to say, Robert, that's anti-Semitic and it's terrible. When I go to X and the accounts that I see, like some of them I didn't even know were Jewish. I mean, Insurrectionist Barbie, what is it? Insurrection Barbie.
Maybe it always seems like a bot account.
I thought it was a bot account, and it turns out maybe it's not. And then you got Randy Fine, you got Laura Loomer, you got Sean Farash, you got the usual suspects. We're I don't want to see this, but it's a dozen people being vocal and vitriolic about it, and dishonestly so. Do you think he's going to win, Robert?
I think it's going to come down to the wire. But all these people that say young people don't vote in that district don't know that district. So there's only been 2 competitive primaries in that district in the last decade plus. 2014 when Massie first won, and 2020 when Trump put up with Liz Cheney multiple opponents against him. But they didn't put in the amount of money and focal point they did this time. There wasn't the media blockade. There wasn't the money launch. There wasn't the obsession by the president more than once or twice. What happened in that district is that young people actually turn out at a much higher rate than people anticipate for a primary. And boomers dropped to less than 40% of the vote in 2020. Same in 2014. So, and if you followed the early vote, if you tracked Richard Barris's data, you can get it at Big Data Poll. People can look it up. He publishes everything, all the crosstabs, he's running nightly polls and updating it nightly for the last 10 days, doing this out of his own pocket because it's very hard to poll primaries. Because it's a relatively unique sample that you're trying to get. You're trying to figure out who's going to vote, and you've got a pretty small sample of people that you're trying to reach. And when you've got a district that's been as bombarded as that district, you get a really low response rate typically. And so it's a real challenge. The other pollsters are putting out, Massie's going to lose by 7. Barris is like, nah, Massie's up by 1 or 2. Maybe up to 3 or 4, depending on how turnout breaks. But if you look at it, it looks like I think the boomers are not going to be this 50% plus party. If boomers are 40% or less of the electorate, Massie wins. He's winning millennials by 50 points. The future of the Republican Party is Thomas Massie. That Zoomers and millennials are voting for him by massive margins, despite the fact that they've seen 20 times negative information about Massie than one positive piece of information about Massie. The only people who are voting against Massie are people over the age of 62. And if you drill down into that, if you remove your obsessive Fox News fans from that list, they're split between Massie. That's why it's not even a generational issue. It's a generational source of information issue. Mm-hmm. If you listen a lot to podcasts, you're voting for Massie by 70 points. In other words, people who go out and seek multiple independent sources and a wide range of independent information and do their own investigation are overwhelmingly saying, I'm voting for Thomas Massie. The only people voting against Massie are the ones who deliberately don't seek out independent information, don't seek out alternative channels and sources to challenge or question the conventional wisdom. And that's the problem for Galrin, is that Galrin had a low ceiling, high floor, but a low ceiling. So the more the vote comes in, the more he loses. And right now, the early vote was almost double what it's been in the past. And most of that is coming out of the 4th Congressional District. I think that's why I say Trump believes that Massie's going to lose by 8 points. They believe that Chris LaCivita, as I like to call him, a man who, by the way, wanted President Trump locked up in 2020 for challenging the election. That's the man Donald Trump is making fabulously rich to the tune of tens of millions of dollars in this campaign. A guy who wanted Trump locked up while people like Thomas Massie were taking political risk and calling his criminal indictments a scam on the floor of the House and before the courts of New York. I mean, it shows you who's loyal to who and what these days. You would think Donald Trump is demon-possessed the way he's behaved in the last 3 months. But so you look it back, I think my bet, if you're at sportspicks.locals.com, you got this information early and often, but I'll give you a sneak peek here. I think over 120,000 people vote. I think Massie wins by 2 to 3 points on election night. And that's part of the reason why I may take a couple of bottles of Pappies and be up there with those influencers and all those sweet, conscientious, good kids who work for Massie's campaign and righteously celebrate with them.
LaCivita liked a tweet that said Twitter locked real Donald Trump for 12 hours. Now the cabinet needs to lock him down for the next 14 days. That's at least one example of that. And then, Robert, I wanted to show one other thing here in our locals community to get to some of those. If you see me go off screen for a second and mute, it's because I'm sneezing or coughing. And for those who don't know, I don't like getting colds and I don't deal with them well. It's going. Where am I? We got Tim Adderholt says it's going to be a confirmation of Trump's self-TDS when Trump attacks the Kentucky voters after Massie's massive OG MAGA mandate win in 2 days. From your mouth to God's ears. Schnookum says, Viva, what makes you think they want MAGA or MAHA? They do not want to the change we bring. These are the types who support the status quo or just followers, not free. There's no question about that. They're saboteurs, as far as I'm concerned. Saboteurs for real transformational government. Chris Kraft says, Viva, we need a Viva Barnes re-education camp led by head counselor Bill Brown, too, to graduate and get kind of tough if he develops an attitude. No. Chris Kraft says, I'm being gracious in your name. Thank you very much, Chris Kraft. Kate Trimbach says, thanks to Lauren Boebert's tweet, I was able to block over 1,000 Magatard bots today. Woohoo. Then we got Passion Moyer says, here's hoping the stream doesn't freeze again. That cannot have been fun for you. That's a very good.
That's great. Well, yeah, you got to steal. That's a wonderful meme. I look like a great white zombie.
Well, hold on a second. Bring it back here. This is amazing. They have these things called frozen fracture cards in baseball and whatever.
Yeah.
Just like that. Let me see here. Frozen. That's from come on, The Shining.
Yes.
Ryan PD 911. Where does Barnes stand on Dan Bilzerian versus Randy Israel Horrifying?
I like the other guy. There's a third candidate running. I think his name is Aaron Day, and I like him more. Bilzerian is a weird. I hate Fine. Bilzerian is just Blizzard, whatever his name is. He's
Bilzerian. He's the problem is you get Randy Fines of the world, make the Dan Bilzerians of the world. I've
third candidate. No one's paying attention to. Aaron Day, I think, is an old school, more MAGA populist guy that's running in that district.
Which is this? Okay,
it's Florida 11, maybe, I think.
Okay, I'm going to double check that.
But they just redistricted, so I'm not sure what his district looks like now.
Chris Kraft says, Commodore Barnes is so sharp now, I'm now convinced he must have graduated high school at Grace Baptist when he was 11. Chris Kraft says, when we're listening to Las Vegas Barnes with a touch of Bill Brown too, Cameron 1N1M. Didn't Barnes once convene us on how great Trump was? He was.
Absolutely. I defended to my personal and the political financial detriment. I have defended and protected and advanced and advocated for Donald Trump for more than a decade. And when I see him go after the people like Joe Kent, go after people like Thomas Massey, go after people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, and go after people like Lauren Boebert, while he wages war in Israel, while he champions and cheerleads Lady Lindsey Graham, while he talks about amnesty on immigration, while he does anything Bibi wants him to do, then he has betrayed us. I haven't betrayed him. He has betrayed us at this point. And I've reached my limit with it, especially as it relates to Massey. It's intolerable. I mean, you can follow Daniel Horowitz as more of a traditional conservative. And he points out, he goes, Trump endorses the worst. Trump is going to leave the Republicans worse off than he came in, with more rhinos in power than when he came in, because of Trump, because of who he is endorsed and who he is opposed. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you about it, because I took a lot of political and personal and professional heat for publicly defending him for a decade. I don't believe in sunken cost fallacy. I'm not going to throw money down a pit.
It's not because he was right for however many years that he's not wrong now. There's certain things that just have been a betrayal of what he's been advocating for the last 9 years.
It's that simple. Donald Trump campaigned against the Donald Trump we've seen. Yeah. Donald Trump spent 10 years running against the Donald Trump we've seen for the last 6 months.
Cameron says, Barnes has just the top 5 sales psychology tricks. Todd, if you care, holy shit, I don't get that either. Chaton says, Massey supporters are saying they have been heavily throttled on X. Can't confirm, but it rhymes. Then we got USA Now. What's this?
Oh, that's great.
Let me steal, man, this, Robert. Shut up and let me Save as. That's fantastic. Let's go rant. And let's escape here. Then we got Blue CW Soldier. Speaking of primary runs and having an empty suit, what are the options for the 1st Congressional District of Florida? Gates, former AIPAC first, Jimmy pay-to-play Petronas out of his seat. Petronas being the one who hasn't washed his hands since shaking Netanyahu's.
Yeah. Maybe that's the race that Fine is representative of. Or maybe it's a different one. I can't remember.
Robert, Sports Picks won't let me be a supporter and buy coins. I want to bet on Massey. I gave support. Well, so Robert, if you had to place a bet, I mean, I'm looking at the markets.
So I've got a bunch of staggered recommended bets at different bankroll percentages up at Sports Picks, but the one I'll give away here free is just Massey to win anywhere under 65%.
Yeah, he's at 50 now.
He's been floating between 45 and 65, but really 45 to 55. There's going to be people who continue to put out fake polls who are betting who are trying to get the markets to go their way. That's Barris is not doing that. He's staking his public professional reputation on it. There's people, let's just say very powerful people in certain big buildings that might look white, that are very unhappy at Barris putting out polls showing Massey ahead. but he's still doing it anyway because he wants to try to do accurate, honest polling because he thinks the American people's opinion need to be accurately represented to the rest of the world.
And Bill Brown says, are you okay? No, I'm living in a country run by fucking clowns and a meme. Chaton says, all these people are now dead to me. It will be very interesting to see how their numbers look next month. Just me or a bunch of people. I hope they're all ruined. I will do my part to ruin these despicable people. Well, what they don't understand is Trump's not going to be in power forever, regardless. And these people have zero credibility and have actually just become worse than the left because at least the left always owned their despicable nature.
No one's going to care about him in a couple of years.
You both deserve a Lord have mercy. Hold on a second, Robert.
Oh, yeah, you're going to do we got a hot sauce coming for the 1776 Law Center Conference. That will be Lord have mercy.
Oh, no, hold on. You got to do it again.
Yeah, there it is. Lord have mercy. Hot sauce coming this summer from Viva Freiheit.
Yeah, we're gonna get that in.
Lord have mercy.
Let me go back here, and we'll get to the other ones afterwards, or a couple more. All right, that's the MAssie talk. What do you got?
Now we got MAssie would be the white pill of all white pills. You have to. You won't. I don't know if there is a single congressional. It would be the ultimate upset against the entire. It's literally David against 10 Goliaths is Thomas Massie. David versus Goliath is back, and David's name just happens to have been changed to Thomas Massie. But Tina Peters is another big white pill of the week.
So is she the governor Polis, who's a Democrat governor of Colorado? Basically, is it clemency? I'm not sure the exact procedural mechanism.
Commutation, yeah. Commutation or clemency, either way works.
And is letting her out. And I say, I God willing, and God forbid something happens between now and June 1st. She's got less than 2 weeks left. They're going to let her out on June 1st. The question I asked you privately, I'm not sure if it's true, but whether or not the administration played any role in this. But the bottom line is that, yeah, and I was texting. I've been on Tina Peters' channel many times since she's been locked away, and it's confirmed. So she's going to get out on June 1st. They better keep her safe. I don't know how anybody is going to heal from that after coming out. But when Robert gets back, my question is going to be whether or not the administration played any role in this, or this was such an egregious injustice. Even the Democrat Governor Polis felt the need to right that wrong. But when Barnes gets back, I'll ask him if he thinks there's any conspiracy theory as to why this might be. But let me do one thing until he gets back, and that's going to go back to here. You both deserve Lord Harmony. Roostang says, Robert, if the Hatch Act is supposed to eliminate corrupt practices in national elections, and it was amended in 1940 to further limit contributions by individuals to companies and campaign committees, how is it that we see this, what appears to be a flagrant violation of the act? I read that people saying it was not a violation of the Hatch Act because there was an exception carved out for the Minister of War, Department of War. Robert, just on the Tina Peters getting pardoned or clemency from Polis, what's the political motivation for Polis to actually do this? And did the administration or the Civil Rights Division have any influence, any sway? Did they pull the strings behind the scenes to, I don't know, coerce or entice Polis to pardon, commute the sentence of Tina Peters?
I think the key was very much the court of public opinion. So I think, the Trump by himself wouldn't have changed that dynamic because they could have pushed back and could be popular in Colorado to push back against Trump. Civil Rights Division was very weak in their efforts. So I think what changed it was there was so much criticism in the court of public opinion about such a harsh sentence for someone of her age. And that was a smart place for the right and left to overlap because the left doesn't like long prison sentences for nonviolent offenses, typically. Now, in fact, the people with power on the left are really liberal authoritarians. So they have no problem with all that. But the hardcore, more young left does have a problem with the incarceration state, as they call it. So I thought the smart place of overlap between libertarians, the left, and populists on the right was to highlight the disproportionate and excessive sentence. And it was a way to reach through the court of public opinion, reach the courts of law, which then reach the courts of legislative and executive power. And I think because the court said the sentence was so ridiculous, that in turn informed giving the governor political cover to have he didn't want her dead on his watch. It's the short answer. So so credit to the ordinary everyday people making enough stink about her case that it got the attention. Is it the full justice it deserves? No. But is it better than her dying in prison or being at risk of dying in prison? Absolutely.
Well, I would make the joke that, Polis might be thinking a little bit self-preservationally because the left likes to deny election results when convenient. So none of them want to feel like they might end up in jail if they do this in another state. Robert, question from the Hans One Pack. I'm not going to bring it up on Rumble, but here. Hasn't Barnes said the Hatch Act is unconstitutional? I'm fairly certain you have.
Yeah, there's aspects, absolutely. That the Hatch Act, to the degree it restrains or restricts First Amendment activities. But there's aspects of it that are clearly unconstitutional. The one aspect I don't have a problem with is that the federal government should not use federal government resources to advocate for someone politically. That's the one aspect I think is constitutional. When it says that simply because you're a federal employee, you lose your political rights, I think that's unconstitutional. But the one thing it's designed to do is to prevent what Hegseth is doing now, which is to use, hey, the Secretary of War says you need to vote for this candidate. That's the one thing you're not supposed to have. And that's the one thing that is constitutional in the law.
It's pretty bad. I mean, it's almost as bad as when, members of the administration take to Twitter to berate individuals and, journalists or commentators.
You mean that MI6 British intel, the war whore, the unhappy whale, as Alex Jones calls him? Are you referencing Sebastian Gorka, who wants to put, this is a bonus topic tonight, wants to put Tucker Carlson on the domestic terrorist list?
I was actually thinking of someone else, but now, Robert, that you bring it up, when did Gorka say that? I mean, I have to go back and see my history with Gorka because I've got one on Twitter.
Oh yeah, so my history with Gorka is I knew his actual history. For those that don't know, Gorka's I think it was either his grandfather. Yeah, I think it was his grandfather. Grandfather, actual Nazi. Wrote about him, the not proverbial Nazi, not rhetorical Nazi, actual Nazi. He talked about what a great warrior he was against the Russians in World War II. I was like, who was against the Russians in World War? Oh yeah, so he got recruited, like a lot of the sons and grandsons of Nazis got recruited by especially the Brits. But the Americans had their special project too, because we wanted those rockets. So we brought in the Nazis' rocket man to help run NASA. The kind of story that when you tell people, they're like, what? That can't be true. And then they discover, oh yeah, everybody knows it's true now that knows anything about the backstory. The project Operation Paperclip, because they had a little paperclip that put the Nazi part underneath it.
To bookmark the Nazi scientists that they wanted for their specific purposes, and they were all in competition for them at the same time.
Completely. So the Brits brought in a bunch of ex-Nazis, kids and grandkids of Nazis, to sort of watch them through the British educational structure. I wonder if there's somebody that was like a kid of a Russian oligarch that might be kind of prominent. You might have had a debate with him back a little ways. Constantine something another. But he might fit this same pattern. But Gorka basically comes in, gets connected to somehow British intelligence and military activity. Then all of a sudden he shows up in Hungary like he's a domestic Hungarian political figure. So basically the Brits, whitewash these guys and then stick them back into Eastern Europe to try to take them over George Soros style. He got outed very early on and had to flee. And so then they laundered him all over again. And they laundered him as a anti-terrorism expert. There's nothing about the guy that has any idea about terrorism. But they laundered him through the American military-industrial complex, which was to run around screaming, the Muslims are coming, or some version thereof. So he snickers his way back in, works with Salem Media. He's outed himself a couple of times. The first time he outed himself was I think you can still get it. So at Sebastian Gorka's website, if it's still up there. Guess what T-shirts you could get? That was his number one favorite T-shirt for expressing support for the American cause. A photo of Zelensky. He was promoting Zelensky. I kid you not. He was selling T-shirts with Zelensky's face on them. That's how embarrassing Gorka is. That's when I outed him, and he went ballistic on me. Then he actually defamed me in a range of contexts, but life is too short to worry about, the Gorkas of the world.
Well, hold on, Robert. I want to bring this one up here because they say it's unclear, but this is grok. Take it for what it's worth. Paul Gorka's okay. In short, the grandfather claim is an unsubstantiated extension of guilt by association attacks on the family's Hungarian nationalist anti-communist background. No public records, memoirs, genealogies, or investigations identify the grandfather as a Nazi.
Except Gorka himself referred to his grandfather fighting the Soviets during World War II.
No, they had the guy there. I won't mention his name up in Canada. The old guy come up who fought the Russians during World War II.
Yes, remember that the Ukrainian. So then he goes after Alex Jones. The attacks Infowars, attacks. That was another out that this guy was just a rat. But now he has been lobbying for Joe Kent's old job. He wants to be head of counterterrorism, even though he has no idea what the hell he's doing at all. And his idea is to go up with a list. And he's being interviewed by Breitbart, and they're like, "Is it just left-wing people on this list?" He's like, "Oh no." He goes, "There's no right." He goes, "There's really true no right-leaning terrorists because Tucker Carlson's not on the right," implying that Tucker Carlson was on a list that was now a domestic terrorism list led by Gorka, this Brit. Should we have foreigners in high-ranking positions of our government? Why can't we have, unless they're named Viva Frei, we shouldn't have any foreigners in the government.
Even then, I would understand if someone says we don't want anyone who was not born in America, maybe even second generation, to have a judge position, law enforcement might be getting there.
Or law enforcement, really, to me. No judges, no law enforcement, no intelligence operatives. That should not be foreigners. And yet we got them all over the place. So, that was the story of Gorka wanting to put Tucker on a domestic terrorism list.
Yep.
Along with Nick Fuentes, but Nick Fuentes, who cares? Personally, I oppose him being put on any list in case anybody misconstrues that. But I'm much more concerned that the most popular, number one rated independent podcaster in America, the most important anti-war podcaster in America, is being put on list by the administration that's supposed. Right now, Democrats have a 20-point lead on the question of who do you think is less likely to engage in mass censorship. They think the Democrats are less likely. Republicans are now the party of censorship due to these idiotic actions like the Israel lobby and Gorka.
It's what happens when you get into the position of power. I mean, then you no longer necessarily like the wonders of free speech. By the way, everybody who's watching on Rumble right now, if you're watching it here and you see it on the landing page, click on it and give it a thumbs up. The wonders of free speech. Robert, we got a lot of thumbs down tonight. You pissed somebody off. And subscribe, everybody. If you want to support the channel, you can go to tip, and you know how to do this. You can tip with Bitcoin, crypto, Tether. It's fantastic. Scan the QR code. Go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com if you want to support the channel there. XAUT, gold-backed Tether, gold-backed crypto. You can do that as well. And we do
utility to having that anyway. I'm going to create a separate as part of our freedom planning videos at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. The utility of Rumble Wallet's going to be a big part of it. Having a little crypto availability where you can put it, Polymarket, other places, that there's a certain financial freedom component to that's just part of any good plan.
To be able to cross borders and have access to funds regardless of where you are it's amazing. And I did notice that you could, if you're on Kalshi, I didn't do it. Apparently it says you need to be a U.S. citizen to use crypto. But if you have a Rumble wallet, you can transfer crypto into any of these markets if you want to invest or just hold gold-backed crypto because of the partnership with Tether. Robert, let's do Chud the Builder. Now, I don't know. You may not know who he is. He goes around, I think it's Tennessee.
It is Tennessee.
Live streaming him saying do you like free speech? And then the people say, yeah, of course. And he says, well, how about if I say the N-word? And he says it. And they're like, whoa, no. So he's been creating content on this. He's a young guy. He's like 24, 25. He's got a kid, from his GoFundMe or gives whichever campaign he uses. So he goes around arguably, and I am, again, people, you'll misunderstand because you want to if you're obtuse. He gets reactions out of people from his words, which are the N-word, and then, accusing people of various animal type comparative behaviors. He has gotten into some confrontations. He has gotten into some legal issues where he was streaming at a restaurant. They told him to leave, and he says, "If you don't leave, if you tell me to leave, I'm not paying for the meal." And then they charged him for theft of services. There was another incident. Doesn't really matter what it was. He, in another one, is streaming outside of a courthouse. Somebody comes up to him and says, "From what we know, I don't think we've seen a full video of the incident." Says, "You're that guy. If you say anything to me, I'm gonna beat you up or something, or stay away from me." And then whatever happens, and then he is carrying a gun. And I don't know who said what to whom first, who threw the first punch. If he goes up to this guy who says, "Stay away from me," and he starts calling him or using the N-word in front of a black guy, he ends up shooting the guy and accidentally shooting himself in the arm, and then gets arrested for attempted murder. And it was something about possession of a firearm in commission of a felony. And I'm not sure what the felony was, if it was assault. And they set his bond at $1.25 million out of the courthouse. And the judge explained that, because of a sequence of escalating incidents, this is sufficiently serious, and the bond is at a $1.25 million. I do not say words justify violence ever, period. That being said, what's funny is there was a tweet, I forget what it was a video saying, yeah, if you go up to someone and call their wife a fat whore, you should expect to get punched in the face. And then under those circumstances, everybody says, yeah, you defend the honor of your wife. Unless you're a pussy, you're going to punch the guy in the face. But then when they say, when you go up to a guy and call him the N-word, you may not deserve to get punched in the face, but you're going to get punched in the face. And then the question is going to be, you go up to somebody, you call them a horrible slur, whatever, they respond with physical aggression, and then you shoot them because you know you have a gun when you went and did that. And my question, it's not an affirmation, a statement. It's not about importing Canadian cuckery, whatever you want to call it, sissiness into America. You would not provoke a violent reaction out of me, one way or the other. It would require violence to provoke a violent reaction out of me. Call me whatever names you want. Don't care. You're not doing anybody any honor by getting arrested, going to jail, and having to post bail to get out because someone called your wife a whore and you thought it was a good idea to punch him in the face. Plus, you get shot afterwards, and good for you. You stood up for your wife's honor. Now you're dead. Okay. When it comes to racial slurs or these types of things, is he going to lose the right to self-defense, the claim of self-defense, when they're going to make the argument, whether anyone likes it or not, he provoked a response from someone knowing that he was out-armed, or that he had the Uno card when it came to self-defense. Oh, you punch me, then I shoot you. Is he going to potentially lose the right to self-defense by virtue of the fact that some might say he provoked the aggressive response knowing that he had the one-up Uno card to trump that violence that he deliberately knew that he was likely provoking from the individual?
We might look up Cartman, South Park, Castle Defense, Token, because that's what they say, sort of what you're describing here. When Token researches after the Zimmerman case, what the defense is, and his goal is to be able to shoot Token but get away with it. And so that's the funny part of it. So in Tennessee, you don't have a duty to retreat like you do in a lot of other states. So in Tennessee, you have what's loosely, colloquially called stand your ground. So the right to stand your ground applies as long as when you're standing your ground, you're engaged in lawful conduct and you're lawfully present where you're at. So, for example, you can't stand your ground inside somebody else's house. Right. If you're broken into somebody else's house and be like, well, I'm going to stand my ground before you kick me out of here or you shoot me for trying to breaking into your house. Another example of that would be other kinds of unlawful conduct that some people confuse sometimes with the provocation exception. It's totally separate under Tennessee self-defense law. The provocation exception is if you instigated the action that led to your defense. The question is the proximity in terms of proximate cause of those two. And it was how much I said something 2 weeks ago. I said something 2 hours ago. I said something 2 minutes ago. When is it proximate cause that it literally triggered that reaction? And that reaction is an understandable reaction as well. So
also the proximity, but also the nature, like words versus a shove, words
correct.
Versus a
that's the other part, is to what degree is the instigation, is the reaction to the instigation itself reasonable? And you get a comparable analysis like you do to the proportionality. The two things I say that are almost universal self-defense, whether it's a person or a country, almost anywhere in the world, are proportionality and necessity. Is the reaction necessary? Is the for the purposes of preserving and protecting your rights, your liberty, your physical security and safety, or somebody else's? And is it proportionate? And so if it's not necessary and it's not proportionate, if it's not either of those things, then, or if it's not both of those things, then you have an imperfect self-defense, which sometimes reduces the level of criminal culpability but doesn't eliminate it. Then you have, so you have unlawful location exception, unlawful activity exception, provocation exception, and then the necessity and proportionality that goes into each one of those analyses. So it will really be fact dependent and credibility capable. If the only thing he did, I heard one interpretation where he heard them were making fun of him, so he went over to them and said, "If you're going to make fun of me, we're gonna throw down," and somebody started literally throwing down on him. If that's the pattern, he has self-defense because he felt severely physically harmed and at risk of serious bodily harm, and his use of a gun in that context would likely meet self-defense standards, though it's a little bit disproportionate, right? It's got to be, I thought I was going to suffer severe bodily harm from these punches.
And I know, look, I'll bring up I won't bring up the comments of everyone saying, what, sissy Canadian. If here's someone insulting him and then he goes up to them and says, "What did you say?"
That's okay. That wouldn't be provocation because that would be reaction, at least under Tennessee law.
And then how about if he says, "What did you say, N-word?" And then,
then it's still verbal, and that would not justify a violent response.
And so the
thought process of provocation is usually something that's a little bit more escalated from that.
And the idea of,
and then the question also is it a jury question or is it a judge question? If it's a jury question, it's all going to depend on how the jury interprets it.
And I'll bring this one up here. By the way, I'm not even taking a hard position on this one.
I don't know the facts yet.
From the videos I've seen, I can't surmise what happened at all. We got, I say I can't surmise what happened in terms of leading up to and the actual assault. I just know it was just inevitable that when you do this, something's going to happen because not everybody has good impulse control, whatever, across the world. And so you antagonize people, whether they're Irish at a bar, British at a football game.
Wasn't there a part of you that always wanted to see the guy that played Borat just get the crap kicked out of him? You know what I mean? He's always provoking people all the time. It's like, it'd be just a little funny to see not dead or anything, but just the crap kicked out of him.
Hiro Sanishiban says, "Viva, I know you don't know the origin about Chud the Builder. I don't know his life story.
No idea.
So please be understanding. I'll try to find a good backstory for you. You're misinformed. The man he shot and killed stalked him from hours away." Again, I don't
know either. Yeah. Again, he might have a completely robust defense. We're just laying out what the legal standards are.
Well,
it's probably going to go to a jury. Is the short answer.
In terms of the bond being set at 1.25, I said that in and of itself, to me,
that's
regardless,
ridiculous.
Is ridiculous. Even he only has to post 10% of it. Okay, so that's $120,000.
That must mean the local county doesn't like him. Now, I would say, in the defense of the court system there in Tennessee, any murder, even if it's attempted murder, gets very high bonds typically.
But they say he's not going anywhere. He's not a flight risk. You want to give him conviction. So don't let him stream. Don't let him whatever.
A lot of the local bond operations are. Who do you think pays for the clerks' political campaigns, the judges' political campaigns? It's a bunch of bondsmen who want to make those the people that most hate no cash bail are the bondsmen because they're out of business when that happens.
Hans One Pack says all cat boys should be on a list. I don't know what that means. Hans One Pack says, then why should I care about Joe Kent's service?
That's a reference to certain habits of a certain Nick Fuentes.
Oh, okay, fine. Then why should I care about Joe Kent service if he can't use his service to advocate a position? I'm not sure.
It's absolutely okay to use your service to advocate a position. The point of Viva that was making is these people were making contradictory arguments. That when it's Galrain, all of a sudden his service is heroic and no one should question him. But when it's Joe Kent, who has a much better record of service, all of a sudden it's grounds to defame him and demean him. It can't be both.
Let me read this one and let me answer this one for you, Robert, before you answer it. Randy Edward, I know you're a good guy, Randy. I'm not making fun at all. Hypothetically speaking, how would you two respond if Iran mission succeeded, the Amish are vindicated, and the Epstein debacle is resolved satisfactorily? How do you undo all the negativity? I would argue if that happens and keep dreaming, It happened because of and I'll put it in quotes, negativity. It would not have happened if everyone sat on their laurels and said, this is fine, this is fine. If it happens, and by the way, all of that happening, enjoy your Christmas wish list. It's not going to happen, but God willing, it does. It happens.
It'd be great if it does. It's what some of us want to have happen.
No, it's like it happens because of the pressure, not despite it.
Oh, absolutely. And my criticism is that right now it's not happening. That's the issue. But if it does happen, God bless. Happy to I'll be the front of the cheerleaders.
Barry N. McGrow, and I'm not sure someone is a MAssie baiter. That's not bad. Maydog says, I'm a proud Appalachian man who grew up in Eastern Kentucky. I've been all over the world, and I've never seen a group of people harder to propagandize the conservatives from Appalachia.
That's
God, from your mouth to God's ears.
I mean, these are people that notoriously come out to vote against every war we've ever been launched into. Now, what they're benefiting from is if independents could vote, MAssie would win by 20 points. But so the independents in this district can't vote. Only the registered Republicans can. Mm-hmm. That's the only reason it's even competitive. And what is normally this much money gets dumped on your head. The president of your party beats the daylights out of you on a daily basis. He has the Secretary of War coming in to campaign against you during a war. The leading news broadcast station completely blacklist you. And people like Laura Ingraham they defame you and libel you on a regular basis. Normally, you would lose by 30, 40 points. Look what happened to Liz Cheney. Didn't she lose by 40 points? So that's what normally. And she didn't have anywhere near this amount of money spent against her. She didn't have Fox News blacklist her. She didn't have the president rail against her every single day. And yet Massie's still in this fight because Northern Kentucky, they don't understand Northern Kentucky. Do I think they can win? Yeah, I think there's a 35% chance they win. I think they lose long term if they win on Tuesday night for all the reasons Barris has explained many times, for all the reasons Charlie Kirk, Charlie Kirk's favorite congressman, Thomas Massie, for a reason. That Charlie explained many, many times, you can't torch this part of the coalition and expect to do well in the midterms. But but the reason why it's so close, so the reason why they can't knock him out, no matter what they do, Rocky style. Somebody should make a meme of the Israel lobby as the big tough Russian boxer trying to pound on Rocky, and Rocky keeps going. Is because it's Northern Kentucky. That Northern Kentucky has as tough and as strong a spine as Thomas Massie himself.
I'm battling a sneeze, Robert. Let me do this while we can. Let's.
You got it. You found it. Yeah, this is the Castle defense as researched by the one and only Cartman of South Park.
We'll see if this gets copy claimed on CommieTube, but.
Sorry. So what? Uh-oh.
And I'll commentate. This is a transformative legal analysis of South Park, Robert.
Sound like you're still angry, Token. Fuck you. All right, Token, come on. This is ridiculous. I know you totally want to kick my ass right now. You'd like to walk right up and punch me in the face, but what's that going to solve? I've got a way better idea. Fist bump?
Okay, I've never seen this before, and I don't know how bad it gets. Okay, let's see. Hold on a second. I think I know where it's going.
Come on, dude. Fist bump. Bump that shit, bro. Be the bigger person. He was on my ground.
Okay. All right. I think I've got.
He might have a provocation defense. He might have but that was Cartman's attempts at the stand your ground defense.
Now let me just go over to CommieTube and see what's going on. Oh, look at that! I've been kicked off for inauthentic content. I'm joking. Bada bing, bada boom. All right, Robert. What do we move on to now? There were some other things.
Well, the second most popular topic of the night was the Fourth Amendment's implications in the privacy context and these flock cameras.
Oh, this is wild. Okay, so this is first of all, when I see Norfolk and flock cameras on the corners of streets zooming in on your license, I thought it was Norfolk, like somewhere in England. This is Norfolk, Virginia, and Americans are not like the Brits. They're not going to put up with CCTV everywhere. So these cameras, there's about 170 of them. They're scanning all the time for no particular purpose, with no discretion whatsoever, and they're zooming in and scanning license plates for no purpose, no cause, no nothing. What else? I mean, people can see this. I think they can access. People with access can access this at any time, basically all the time, all of the details. And they filed a suit for, I want to say, what is it, Fourth Amendment? Just to check my
Fourth
notes.
Amendment.
Fourth Amendment violations. And they were initially tossed on lacking standing. Robert, do I understand that part properly?
Yeah, there's been multiple efforts to come at this. So, and it's because of this unique crossover space that they are in. So the flock camera reference the flock camera companies, and what they're doing is they're putting them up all over the place, and they're basically fingerprinting your car. So they're using not only the license plate but other aspects of your car to kind of forensically fingerprint it, so they can track and trace it wherever it goes. And what they're doing is they're playing off of. They say they are taking great lengths to be able to limit the invasiveness of it by only keeping the data for 30 days, only sharing certain parts, only putting some parts of the story together. But you have to trust that that's the case. The issue is what happens when it goes beyond simply capturing your license plate. Because when your car is out in public, there's a view that in public view, there's no reasonable expectation of privacy, and thus the Fourth Amendment doesn't come in. Then there's two different arguments with the Fourth Amendment. One is property-driven, one is privacy-driven. The old one was property-driven, which was to say, is this your house, your papers, your person? And it was if either had to be a property interest before the Fourth Amendment would be required for a search, because they said if it's not your house, not your papers, not your person, then it is not a Fourth Amendment violating search, even if it's warrantless and even if it's unreasonable. Now, what happened is in the 50s and 60s, the Supreme Court went back and said, really, that's a privacy definition. Now, this is the Federalist Society being a little bit of sleight of hand. You can find privacy-based arguments by the federal courts and by our founders all the way back. They pretend that doesn't exist because they like to write their own fake version of legal history as originalist interpretation. So one of the big risks of originalist interpretation is it becomes very selective in its historiography and what history it treats as actual history. But putting that aside, the currently recognized Supreme Court majority is there a reasonable expectation of privacy? And the presumption is there is no reasonable expectation of privacy in your driver's license. But at some point, every single public move you make of your car being forensically fingerprinted and shared with the world, at some point crosses over into something you do have a reasonable expectation of privacy in, analogizing it to the Carpenter decision in 2018 that we've discussed variations of, which is when they said seizing your cell tower data, using geolocation of it. There's a big geofencing decision to be issued with this Supreme Court, which will impact a lot of this, or may yet to be issued. One of 25 decisions we're just sitting on of big issues in 2 weeks. They got to do. They got a lot of writing and publishing to do up there. But clearly this has been a very contentious court session, probably over redistricting and everything else that delayed and stalled all the other decisions. But what they said in Carpenter was, you have some expectation that you're not being spied on every single place you go. And what it's a recognition of is the Supreme Court coming to terms with the fact that the Fourth Amendment is not consistent with the surveillance state. The surveillance state is abhorrent and directly contrary to the very principles and ideas that the Fourth Amendment represents and expresses in our founders, or whether you look at an originalist interpretation or a living as applied today interpretation. Either one, there's no doubt that our founding generation would be very unhappy with the idea of green lighting a warrantless surveillance state. And that's what flock cameras are becoming. They're becoming a warrantless surveillance state. And a federal court in Virginia agreed and is allowing a major case to go forward on those grounds.
The Carpenter was 5-4, right? Is there a chance?
And it was Roberts wrote the majority. Gorsuch wrote his own dissent. What it was Gorsuch, Scalia, and Thomas wanted to limit the Fourth Amendment to property interest. And what it is it's based because they've been misled by the corrupt prosecutor-driven Federalist Society writing these fake legal histories of the Fourth Amendment. The idea of the Fourth Amendment was all about property, only cared about property, is complete and utter garbage. You can't, what does the Fourth Amendment come after? This would be one of those quizzes that people like Barrett would probably fail. Comes right after the Third Amendment, which is about what? Not allowing federal agents to live in wherever your residence is, not allowing them to sort of impose themselves on you. So it was beyond property interest that was being recognized. Most of the people that fought in the revolution had no legal property interest. They were, many of them were tenants in one way, shape, or form. So the idea that you had to have property to have a Fourth Amendment is hogwash. It's a fake history written by a bunch of pro-prosecutor, bow to the badge conservatives that put the con in conservative. Not the way like Kurt Schlichter puts the con in conservative, because that man's the king of putting the con in conservative. But comparable to it by analogy. And if you dig into it, but you're correct. There's no guarantee that this Supreme Court majority would be for a robust Fourth Amendment and would likely turn a blind eye to the surveillance state.
Because I'm trying to figure out like what a victory would look like. You're going to have, they've got standing so they can sue. The question is going to then be, well,
they can't gather the data, they can't keep the data, and they can't share the data. So they can do just photos of driver's licenses, but not the constant tracking and tracing, number one. Number two, not the storing of that. And number three, not the sharing of it. So at least block the sharing of it. You'd like to block the storing of it, and you'd like to block the surveillance of it to begin with. To make it only about, like other cameras are only about people speeding and breaking rules. Not about we want to track you everywhere.
Well, that was the distinction. They said there's no triggering device. It's not speed. It's not blowing a red light. It's just constant.
It's indistinguishable from GPS trackers, which they've said in other contexts it requires a Fourth Amendment violation. Fourth Amendment to stick on your car. This is just a video camera version of a GPS tracker.
It's bypassing, getting the Trojan horse or whatever you want into your cell phone to track your every movement. Although that's there as well. I guess analogous wise, it would be as if Apple would share your geolocation on your cell phone willy-nilly or allow it to be stored, access, shared with. Although they do that anyhow.
That's what the Carpenter decision was about in part, because whether you went to the cell phone track site locator or whether you went to the cell phone company, that was considered a Fourth Amendment violation because they said there was an expectation that you were not being constantly tracked on a daily basis everywhere you were going and every place that you went in terms of your physical location. And that just because you're in a public location doesn't mean they can track you to every public location you go to. And they said at some point there is some intrusion on privacy. And I think that this does breach that. I think the district court made the right decision. Let's hope it continues to progress in that direction. Now, speaking of the same kind of spying they do on the internet. When you're going to a little website and you're looking around at something, you wonder, how in the world do I get an ad on something I didn't even buy, but I just looked at for like maybe 5 seconds? Well, they have these special proprietary things that are watching how long you're at this part of the website, all these different components. They're tracking that, and they call it fingerprinting you. Just like the flock cameras are using your vehicle to fingerprint you, they're fingerprinting your web history, your search history, what you do on the site at that time. And so people started suing, saying, I didn't volunteer for this. I didn't even know it was happening. It's a violation of my privacy. And of course, they keep extending and expanding the standing doctrine and trying to prohibit people from suing. At least they recognized in this case that you're able to sue some of the time if you can find a tort analog. And the proper tort analog is intrusion on seclusion. It's not the publication of private facts because there often is no publication. They're just grabbing this data and information for themselves. But it's an intrusion if what they've done, again, it goes back to the reasonable expectation of privacy. Things like medical records, things like financial records, things like payment systems, things that you wouldn't want the world to know that are confidential and sensitive. They recognize that is an intrusion for them to be tracking and tracing and gathering that. And consequently, you do have a legal right to bring claims under the wiretapping laws because the wiretapping laws incorporate in there reasonable expectation of privacy. One place where the wiretapping laws don't apply is when you're trying to prevent and prohibit First Amendment protected undercover reporting, like the big win James O'Keefe had this week.
That's what I let me pull up the video because I think we're not going to watch the entire video. What was the expression? If someone who's a 10 is showing interest in you who are a 6, you're being honeypotted.
Yeah.
This I remember this one when it came out. It was kind of good.
About the CIA, and some statements you have made. You have a top secret clearance. You said that
this
you, quote,
is a guy
keep
named
information from him, Trump. You didn't say that. Quote, you work at the Chinese Mission Center in Langley, Virginia?
This was a guy from the CIA. I forget his exact position right now. Basically spilling the beans, talking about how the intelligence agencies are withholding information from Trump because he gets busted on an undercover camera with a girl who's he's going on a date, and these idiots. I always say sometimes they're admitting to things that they can't admit to just because they're trying to boast and impress a date. Sometimes they tell the truth. And this guy was talking about how they withhold information from the president of these United States of America himself. And then the guy sues on the basis that it was what was he going for? Invasion of privacy. Let me see if I can get this here. By the way, he sued James O'Keefe. And James O'Keefe and OMG under his last name is Barr. His first name is not William Barr. Come on, what's the lawyer's name? Oh, I'm going to forget it. I said I was going to make a joke if I call you Bill Barr.
The Attorney General was William Barr.
Yeah, I know, but the lawyer representing James O'Keefe in this, his last name is Barr.
Oh, right.
And I had him on the channel a couple of weeks ago. I mean, I'll get him back on to talk about this. They got it tossed on a number of cases. First Amendment protections. Oh, yeah, it was fraud, misrepresentations. The guy tried to claim that it was, I guess he got fraudulently duped into going on a date, and the judge says that what is it? The fraud, the alleged damages did not follow from the undercover date itself, but I guess rather what he disclosed voluntarily to someone who was not in a need to know basis. But bottom line, First Amendment, there was no fraud claims. The lawsuit got dismissed, tossed, and it reaffirms the rights, also the obligations of the James O'Keefes of the world to continue doing what they're doing. And if anybody goes on a date and blabs like an idiot to their date, you're gonna learn the lesson the hard way. We'll see what that impact has in Florida, where right now, what's his face there? Tiermand is trying to use the domestic division of the Florida courts to get James prohibited from doing investigative journalism. This was out of Virginia, Robert, right?
Yes, and so this was a big case for James O'Keefe. Because the assumption is that when does the First Amendment apply, even in these federal wiretapping laws, invasion of privacy, other torts that they're trying to use? They usually use a state or federal version of wiretap laws to go after undercover reporters and crush them. And the courts are picking up on the fact, in a case that I had ties to many years ago, back to my college days, which is the Food Lion cases. So when I was an intern at the AFL-CIO after my freshman year at Yale, one of the things we were doing was infiltrating the various big grocers. The goal ultimately was to unionize those grocery stores. But what we would do is expose various forms of fraud that was taking place. We're also working with Harry Wu, who was the great Chinese labor activist, exposing that. We were behind undermining the Domino's 30-minute guarantee. We created like 12 fake cutout organizations, like Mothers Against Dangerous Driving. So it sounded like Mothers Against Drunk Driving. They're like 10. We had 10 letterheads, and it was all our organization, and I was the guy typing them up each day. Like we were these big, massive, nationwide organizations, and it was just this freshman kid at Yale going. So you learn all kinds of things politically. But one of the things, we got people undercover, Food Lion. And what Food Lion loved to do is they would take their meat that was bad, and they would go and put like special something on top of it, and then they would rewrap the meat and resell it.
It's straight up. I'm not trying to pick on Apu. It's straight up what Apu did in the episode of The Simpsons, where he scratches off. He adds like a number to the date.
Yes. And the expiry date a little bit longer. They had all these different, and they would sell them as specials on Poor People's Day, basically. Like when you get like food stamps and other things, you could look at this steak is $3.99. This is great, and having no idea it's bad. But trying to disguise it by putting some sauce or something on it. So we were helped undercover, infiltrate, and we expose it all. I learned how the media was just a bunch of lazy bums. You had to do all the work, and then you gave them their great undercover reporting was just your work, actually, as an undercover labor investigator. So, but those cases, Food Lion got sued because they're like, "Oh, this is illegal wiretapping. You recorded me without my notice or consent. You snookered me."
Jiminy cricket! Ooh, expired ham.
Whoa, talk about your pieces of crap.
I guess he didn't relabel that. I misremembered. I'm sure he relabeled it once. All right. Yeah. So
that was actually happening. That's where they got that idea from. But so those went through the court system. The court system recognized the First Amendment is a restriction on courts. It's a limit on what courts can do. Any state, any government actor is limited, state or federal, by the First Amendment. Federally, directly under the First Amendment, the states through the 14th Amendment, the First Amendment is enforceable. And that means that you cannot use your court power, whether it's a statutory claim, a tort claim, doesn't matter what it is, to suppress First Amendment activities. And this is undercover reporting for the purposes of press publication of issues of public interest. And their point was, in order to sue under that, you have to meet the same standards you would have to meet as a libel suit. If O'Keefe is disclosing the truth, he can't be sued constitutionally. It's outrageous. He has been constantly sued when the law is well established on this, and the First Amendment reads in the plain language words it's written in, which is, there shall be no law that abridges the freedom of press in this country. And all the efforts to persecute him for doing his undercover reporting duty and obligation of the freedom of press has been a violation of that First Amendment right. Credit to this court for recognizing that and shutting it down.
They went after, it was the wiretapping also, where federal wiretap violations, where they're saying Virginia was a one-party consent state. This is one of the questions that often comes up is, can you do what James O'Keefe does in an all-party consent state or a two-party consent state?
Under the federal law, you only have to have one party, period. But there's an exception if the purpose of what you're doing is illegal. So that even if your recording can be illegal, even if you have a party that's consented to it, if the purpose of that recording is some illegal action. So if the recording itself was defamatory, then that would be an action. This was not, because it wasn't, because it was press. It was press about a matter of public interest. And that's what keeps him constitutionally protected. It's just the courts have been erratic and sporadic in enforcing it. And it applies to the wiretapping statutes as much as any other statute.
I'm going to ask a question now. Was this it was in Virginia, but was it a
federal court?
It was a federal court. So this does have federal implications.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I know, because otherwise it outright criminalizes undercover journalism, which I grew up with that, and now we don't have undercover journalism. What you have from the MSM is basically bullhorn propaganda. So congratulations, Attorney Barr and James O'Keefe. Well, I tell you, I have yet to see them lose a meaningful case. Robert,
well, speaking of the First Amendment, the other way they've been trying to sneak in various ways of getting under the First Amendment is these licensure requirements, corporate marketing requirements, like we mentioned in the fake meat context. I'm going to have criticisms of the left trying to do it. I have criticism of the either side trying to misapply it and either side trying to get credit for it, which they don't belong. Because to some degree, this decision is like the right-wing version of the fake meat. But basically, it's the green movement creating rules governing who can say they're selling and marketing green energy. And part of these laws are very legitimately based in ways the courts are dismissing because they're so deferential to corporations, left or right. The neoliberals and neoconservatives on the court all bow to the corporations. And most of them, more often than not, bow also to the badge and the uniform. But the other aspect is in the green context. But then there's a flip side of this, which is the reason why the green movement needs these laws is because they can't come to terms and be honest about where the real source of energy for green energy comes from.
Sorry, I had to put myself on mute to sneeze again. Robert, I wanted to get back to some of our tip questions before we get too far behind here. Then I got distracted by a couple of classic memes over on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Let me bring these up. We're going to get to the Canadian one, the Canadian decision in a second. RJ Spain 56, is the court ruling on Cars for Kids commercials have further repercussions on the charity? Can donors sue for false representation of their purpose?
They're the issue because like the fake meat case with the green case, what they said was that it wasn't false and misleading to say you have 100% wind power, even though the state's argument was a lot of people think they're buying green energy when the complexity of the underlying energy grid is such that it's very rare they're really buying the degree of green energy they think they're buying. So I think the state has a legitimate concern that was kind of dismissed by the court. Some of this is misleading, but part of the problem is the green movement itself mostly relies on sources of energy. If you dig into where they get electrical energy from, how they get those resources, they pollute more than the energy they're supposedly replacing. So that's the mixed bag of issue. Generally speaking, fraudulent commercial speech is not protected by the First Amendment. So the key is whether you can put it in that category. If you can't put it in that category, if it's either not commercial speech or it's not fraudulent, because it's the combination of the two that brings it down from strict scrutiny and puts it in intermediate scrutiny, then you have to just show a substantial state interest, and the mechanism being chosen is narrowly tailored to that substantial state interest. In the case of the green energy context, they said it didn't meet that because they didn't see any of this as false or really misleading. I would say some of it really is. People they're saying this is 100% wind power or 100% solar power, when none of it really is because of the nature of it. Part of the point the courts were making was legitimate, that by definition it really can't be due to the innate complexity of the energy grid. But part of it was legitimate on the state's side, that there needs to be some better degree of accuracy in communication because people think they're buying forms of energy that they're actually not.
F. Charton just gave us a link. It says that this is a must-watch video on Flock cameras. The channel is super interesting. We hacked Flock safety cameras in under 30 seconds. I watched that. I think Francis sent me that earlier last week. It'll really freak you out. Alex Jones has repeatedly stated the U.S. federal government has a secret, highly advanced weapons. Why hasn't Trump used these photon torpedoes or whatever on Iran yet? Says Gray 101. Gray 101 says, can United States citizens in most states still be coerced by their employers to get the beautiful, life-giving vaccines if there were other pandemics? More ripple effect from Charlie's murder, says Suera. Recortes, if MAssie loses the Republican, aka Trump primary, good time for a new party. Gray 101 says, now that Trump has shown his true character, do you still believe he never did anything with the Epstein girls? I still don't believe he did, because if he did, it would have been out.
Yeah.
Andrew Branca pointed out how absurd white guy bails are today. More importantly, he said 10% bond plus $500,000 in security. That's a lot to get out of bail. Yeah, there was a comparison to a black guy who was out on some violent crime. I think it was attempted murder, if not murder.
But probably not Tennessee.
No, I think it was that same judge in that same court.
Oh, really? Yeah. That would be interesting.
Exaggerating on the charge. It involved a gun, and I think
it might have been a different charge. It's the murder. It's a attempted murder that triggers the high bail in Tennessee.
I'm going to see if I can find the meme, or not the meme, but the post on X. Trump can still improve the economy by keeping his campaign promise to stop suppressing disruptive American inventions and technologies. Tucker discussed this 1951 Invention Secrecy Act, Gray 101. We got P-Hands, so I can punch a man for calling me cracker. I was talking with my kid. We watched the Chevy Chase, Richard Pryor SNL skit from the 70s. And I had to explain what I thought the origins of cracker was. But
it relates to our Second Amendment case this week.
Which one's the Second Amendment? Hold on a second.
So that's that was before the First Circuit Court of Appeals, where the defendant wanted to assert a justification defense and said the Second Amendment should be a more robust expansion of a justification defense. And part of his defense was that was one racist mofo, and he knew that dude was a racist mofo. And that was the backstory. He's like, I know he was racist. I heard him say racist stuff, so I went down there and boom, boom. And but it was because I knew he was coming for me, because he probably had some Klan hats in the trunk. There was the First Circuit, so they weren't going to take seriously the constitutional challenge. So we didn't get a really robust development of when does the Second Amendment expand justification defenses, and they were kind of dismissive of the fact pattern. So they didn't even let him present this at trial. I disagree with that part of the decision. Even if there was probably some reasons to be skeptical of the defense, that should be a jury decision, not a judge decision. But at least there was some acknowledgement by even the First Circuit that there probably is a more robust justification and self-defense that is constitutionally rooted in the Second Amendment. Something some of us, 1776 Law Center and elsewhere, have been advocating now for decades. And it's good to see it start to get into the court system, start to recognize that. Which, of course, reminds me there are still limited but available tickets for 1776 Law Center. You can go to 1776lawcenter.com You can get the tickets for the annual conference August 1st, August 2nd, Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's going to have Alexander McCourse, Alex Christoforou, Larry Johnson, Daniel Davis, Chase Hughes, Greg Hartley, Scott Rouse, Richard Barris, myself, the one and only Viva Fry, Michelle Renault, State Representative Michelle Renault, who won an upset election of her own a couple of years ago, and then got upset bills passed through the legislature, no less. Amy Miller of the Maha Movement might have a range of surprise guests that can come in, from Judge Napolitano to others. You can go to, there's a great Viva as a pirate revolutionary present in the, everybody loves all the different uniforms and outfits.
It's amazing.
They're using it everywhere. But that's all available at 1776lawcenter.com. We have a hard cap on tickets, so get them now because they'll be probably gone in a couple of weeks.
Now, the one case that I'm much more familiar with now coming out of Canada, and everyone's been asking me to, not ask me, but there's been interest in this decision coming out of an Alberta court, which basically dissolved the petition that had been issued and acknowledged by the elections officer of Canada, the CEO, the Canadian elections officer. Here, I'll also, when Robert's here, I'm going to go like this, remove this out. This is coming out of Alberta, an Alberta provincial court dissolving the petition that had amassed 300,000 signatures to put the separation question to a referendum. It needed, I think, an aggregate of 170 some odd thousand, and it got 300,000, and then it got taken to court by native groups or native tribe, which argued that the petition, which is just a petition to get the referendum question to potentially put it to a vote to separate, hadn't consulted with the indigenous, the native tribes. And a provincial court has declared basically the dissolution of the petition. It's a 30 some odd page decision, and I'm not going to pretend that I can understand it, because I understand it. It's bullcrap. I'm going to have the lawyer on tomorrow at 3:00, Jeffrey Rath, who I've had on before in the past. We're going to talk about it because it's one of those decisions where I joked with him, if you can't convince them with reason, baffle them with bullshit. And this judge came to the conclusion that the CEO, which is the, what's it called? The CEO, it's the Canadian the Canadian Elections Office, the Chief Electoral Office, my apologies, should not have authorized the petition because they hadn't consulted with natives yet about the potential consequences of separating from the Federation, because it's a federal law, and I'm fairly certain it's still called the Indian Act, if I'm not wrong, governs relations with tribes, native tribes, and they're governed by the Federal Act, which grants reservations to natives, which are not subject to, technically speaking, federal law or provincial law. I'll bring Barnes back in on this one, but the judge basically concluded you didn't consult with the natives, and I'm talking with the lawyer. I'm asking, like, nothing's happened yet. Like, how do you consult before the decision to separate has even been submitted, let alone approved, let alone the federal government? And so the bottom line, this judge came out and said, you didn't consult. You should never have authorized the petition itself. We're going to now annul this petition, which had amassed over 300,000 signatures, which is massive in a province like Alberta. And that's where it stands right now. Basically undid the election because there wasn't sufficient consultation. There were some other issues in terms of procedure, which is it's irrelevant. They're going to appeal it, obviously. And the idea of the politics behind this is that they basically want the Premier, Danielle Smith, to come out and say that now they're consulting with the natives to determine what happens in the event of separation, so that they can then blame the separation from Canada on Danielle Smith and not the populist movement that amassed over 300,000 signatures. So there is politics afoot, undoubtedly, with the judge. They're going to appeal it. I'm going to have Jeff Rath on tomorrow, and we're going to talk about it. And for anybody that was interested in what's going on in Canada, the Alberta separatist movement has achieved a substantial momentum, and you've got an activist judge. I said it from the get-go. The feds are never going to let it happen. The court system is the apparatus of the federal government, or the deep state, which is the state up in Canada. They're never going to let it happen. And right now, on a procedural ground, they are attempting to basically dissolve the petition, go back to square one, and then make them petition the chief electorate officer to then, after they consult, which why they would do that before. Go back, then do it. But for now, dissolve that petition that had amassed 300,000. So it's bullcrap. They're going to appeal it. I'm going to have Jeff Raton tomorrow at 3 o'clock to talk about it.
Yeah, if we're going to do something useful, instead of invade Iran, work with Iran, depose Venezuela, try to murder Evo Morales in Bolivia, you try to, take over Cuba again. Why not take over Alberta? Invade Canada. That's the logical place to invade. Invade Canada, lock up Carney, kick out all the Toronto folks, and make Viva Fry Emperor of Canada, and we'll all be good.
Oh boy, no, they'll find a way to. I won't say it out loud. I don't want. I won't even give them the idea. But no, I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. It's not to be blackpilled. But right now they've got one hurdle. Now they'll go through the court process on the validity of the petition before they even get to the question of the referendum question. If it passes, and then what the federal government would say, good, you passed it. We don't have to acknowledge this. But I will ask the lawyer, who's very familiar with this, how the Clarity Act, which is the 1999 law or the court decision that clarified the procedure for separation. We'll talk about it tomorrow, but that's the Alberta issue in a nutshell. Robert, what do we have left before we take the party on over to Viva Barnes?
We got a bunch of SCOTUS. We got a big case about the Federal Reserve. I figure we'll cover those here before we go to the after party. For the after party, we got an innocent man framed. How he got framed, who he got framed by. Did he finally get relief or remedy? We've got the Twin Cities where DEI is about to DIE. We've got the California Coastal Commission finally getting its comeuppance after all these years, for anybody's had to deal with that nightmare of an administrative body. We've got the EU telling Italy they got to put all those asylum refugees on the state welfare bill. So we've got those and one or two other bonus topics. The big ones we have left here are SCOTUS and the Federal Reserve getting special protection again from federal courts. Speaking of courts coming to the rescue of corruption.
So do the SCOTUS, and I'm gonna pull up a few things in the backdrop here.
So the on the Supreme Court, we've got three or four cases that came through, and then we got a bunch of cases that are pending. So the arbitration decision that came down to the Supreme Court simply said if a federal court stays a case while arbitration is pending, once the arbitration is final, you can go back to that same court to either vacate or affirm the arbitration award. You don't have to go to an entirely new court. So they fixed up that procedural process. On corporate immunity, a decision that sent shockwaves to the railroad industry, to the trucking industry. Forever, there's these laws that are in place to allow federal set rates for that basically preempt state laws for the purposes of making it efficient to provide interstate trucking routes and the rates of those trucking routes and the process for that. They had a lot of the people in that industry had interpreted it as preemption of all state tort laws. So they couldn't be liable when the various companies were hiring another company that company knew they had negligent hiring of truckers. Remember that last 5-10 years, there's been all these illegals on the driving 18-wheelers that have no idea what they're doing, causing an explosion of accidents and hurting the wages of one of the highest paying working class jobs in America, which is being a truck driver. The Supreme Court said that never made any sense. The law, in fact, specifically says this law does not govern state safety rules, which is what state tort law is all about. So they said, no, you're not immune from this. If you're involved in negligent hiring that's causing accidents, you're on the hook like everybody else, and there isn't a federal get-out-of-free ticket. So for once, the federal courts recognize the corporations do not deserve or warrant special immunity under federal law. Let's hope that's a preview of things to come in the glyphosate case that they're still sitting on. So that was the second big decision, but big ramifications in the trucker market, that in the insurance world, that did not see that coming. And then on the abortion, over the strong objections of Justice Thomas and Justice Alito, the rest of the Supreme Court wussed out and said the abortion pill, even though it's criminal under various state and federal law to distribute in a range of places, that they stayed the stay. So that basically those companies get to go submit the abortion pill everywhere, no matter what laws it violates, state or federal, while the case is getting litigated as to whether or not it's legal in the first place. So you can get abortion on demand in any part of the country now just by getting it through the mail. You're on mute.
it was the Federal Court of Appeal that issued the ruling that issued the prohibition that you should not be able to access this by mail, the methylprednisolone, because the argument was that they bypassed
it wasn't safe at all, and it violated federal criminal law, the Comstock Act.
They had an injunction prohibiting it. Now it's been available for over 5 years. There was no motivation to this decision that I could see. But is the argument that it's been available?
Didn't explain it either. I mean, Alito and Thomas, Alito in particular, wrote a long objection. But the other, everybody knows why. Gorsuch, Barrett, Kavanaugh, Roberts, they don't want everybody making fun of them when they go on their little tours to France and the Hamptons this summer. That's what it's all about. That the cocktail circuit loves abortion. So they've dealt with enough humiliation just issuing the Dobbs decision, which simply sent it back to the states. So but basically, as Thomas and Alito pointed out, you're completely gutting the import of the Dobbs decision if you can simply get it anywhere in the country by mail, because most abortions take place in this time frame, and a majority increasingly are induced by medication. So what they've done is basically made it so that almost no state is really pro-life, because they're not allowed to be pro-life because of the Supreme Court of the United States not wanting to enforce these rules that they would enforce against any other drug just on the ground it's a dangerous drug, which was the issue with this drug, is that it was independently dangerous, too dangerous to have out there without informed consent. And the current labeling is inadequate and insufficient to meet informed consent standards.
I'm trying to Google. I don't know until what gestational limit methylprednisolone
usually 10 weeks, usually first trimester.
First trimester. Okay, so like you can now first trimester in some of these states where you have abortion, where you have heartbeat pills.
Either heartbeat pills. Some cases you have abortion ban, period, outside of the life of the mother, outside of self-defense or coercion issues.
Methylprednisolone, it's okay. It's FDA approved as effective for medication abortion up to 10 weeks.
And it was the way they approved it was a joke. It didn't meet any of the regular standards. Even Kennedy, who's pro-choice on abortion, said that this pill had huge problems with it that were never fully vetted, never went through thorough clinical testing, where the public was being misinformed about its dangers and risks.
Oh, we got one more SCOTUS decision.
And then the SCOTUS is here's just some highlights of the cases we're still waiting on. I mean, we got 2 weeks, 3 weeks before their session's supposed to be shut down. Remember, they're supposed to be off for the summer. So, I mean, this week, next week, one more week maybe. We got birthright citizenship. We're still waiting on the proper venue for criminal cases. Still waiting on what kind of reasonableness is required for a geofence warrant. Still waiting on immunity for foreign governments. Still waiting on it. Immunity for U.S. government agencies. Still waiting on it. Immunity for big corporations like the glyphosate case. Still waiting on it. FCC agency power. Is Humphrey's executor going to be upheld or finally taken back like it should be? The Federal Reserve, can the president fire people or not? Arbitration in what's the definition of the Interstate Commerce Clause? That has all kinds of ramifications. Bankruptcy procedural provisions, men and women's sports, multiple decisions, asylum issues about immigration, campaign money. When can you govern it? When can you not? Racial jury strikes, the takings clause. When does it apply? Where does it apply? How does it apply? The Federal Reserve, FTC, FCC, Second Amendment drug felon bans, the Hawaii gun ban, is Election Day and Election Day. All of that and more, we're still waiting on for the next couple of weeks. We're probably going to have a lot of SCOTUS cases in the next 3 or 4 versions of Law for the People.
No, that's going to be... I wonder if there's any really bad decisions, politically unpopular decisions that they're just going to try to bury in there by drowning everybody out. Peon says, I don't know why
citizenship will be the one where they really screw over the Trump supporters.
I don't know why calling people part of a fake band is so controversial, says Peons for the Monkeys. A reminder that Chrystia Freeland's grandfather was on a Ukrainian Banderite Nazi collaborator.
A whole bunch of them are Nazis. The current head of the MI6 is Nazi ties. They're all over the place. And every time you peek under a European leader, EU leader, you find another Nazi hiding underneath there.
Robert, I didn't know this. I heard people saying this. Any major political figures who own a stake in Polymarket Yes, Donald Trump Jr. has a stake in Polymarket. His venture,
Yeah.
I can't read this now. Is this true? His venture
Oh, yeah.
capital firm, 1789, made a multi-million-dollar investment in the company. He serves Polymarket is privately held, so exact
They got
ownership is not-
interest in Polymarket. They got interest in Cowsheet. I don't mind that. I do mind the interest in the companies that keep getting military and government contracts. That's the ones like, I mean, they're making Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden was always a bit retarded. You know, the Biden family always called LBJ, but retarded. But basically, the Trump family is making them look like street-level drug dealers compared to a drug cartel. I mean, the Trump family is saying, here's how you do corruption, boys and girls. You don't do tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of millions. You do hundreds of millions. You do billions. The president is himself trading in and out of the stock market right before he makes announcements favorable to the stocks he bought.
It looks like you're trying to smuggle in some Nazi scientists into the country. Would you like me to turn on caps and disable spell check? That's a meme here. We got hot sauce. DTQC, fun fact, Fire Barn is a popular hot sauce here in Quebec, and it's quite good too. Well, there's a good one in Quebec. It's called Blair's Death Sauce. Great rants tonight, guys. Ali Michael, thank you. Richard Barris says Chris Kraft. Let me go all the way to the bottom here, and then we got a few more on Rumble that we're going to get to. Viva, how many cases of Lord of Mercy hot sauce are you bringing to 1776? Do you offer hot or extra and extra hot? We're going to have a lot. I don't know how exactly what it's going to look like, but it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it might have like a Lord have mercy. You might have a choo-hoo-hoo Lord have mercy version. So you might have a hot version, a very hot version, a spicy version, a not too spicy version, a little bit of all in between.
I didn't realize Mark Friesen passed away. He had a health issue. I remember a while back. RB Ham.
Oh.
Rest in peace to my comrade Mark Friesen, the Grizzly Patriot. I would like you to do a segment on his impact here in Canada, Viva. I'm screenshotting this. I didn't realize he passed away. Keep up the good work, says Hackwright. And then what do we got here? Dan Sundin, sorry. What does this say here? Washington, as pro-Trump protests turned into a violent attack. This is January 6th. Ashley Babbitt, Kevin Greason died of a heart attack, collapsing, and Roseanne Boyland. Yeah. Okay, Jonathan.
And by the way, one of the leading advocates exposing January 6th and the corrupt actors involving the police and the inside job and the wrongful treatment of the J6 defendants.
Thomas Massey. And we'll get a couple more here.
In fact, he was doing a lot while a certain president of the United States wasn't saying jack for about 4 years.
Okay, let's see this here. We're going to get these, and then we're going to take the party on over to Viva Barnes Law. Facebook knows when I... Hold on a second. What is this? Where am I?
Facebook knows when I don't think privacy exists anymore. That's
Facebook funny. Knows when I shit. I don't think... There's no question about that. Florida, and by the way, it's also it's taking pictures on both sides of your camera, so I hope everybody appreciates that. Florida passed a law that you can't try to trick the AI in Flock cameras. Flock has also paid off lots of local politicians. They track pedestrians, not just vehicles. Their data is insecure too.
Indeed, one of the topics we're going to start covering a lot more, and it's going to be a special project of 1776 Law Center, is all the legal issues coming out with data centers. Eminent domain issues, takings issues, job replacement issues, water rights issues, energy cost issues, and one of the big ones, lots of political corruption concerns.
Flock tracks pedestrians, not just vehicles. Okay, I think I got that. Florida made it illegal to trick AI. Hiru Suban, thank you. Operations consultant. Flock safety loses another city after CEO's email backfires. First of all, I screenshotted this as well, so I'm going to, I'll email you. Dr. John. And what do we got here? How far would have Paul Revere's midnight ride have gone without Flock cameras?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly.
I don't know what that is.
Well, Paul Revere's ride was Paul Revere went and warned everybody for the American Revolution. The red coats are coming. The red coats are coming. Some of my ancestors were involved in that Paul Revere's ride. But the point is that if there's cameras everywhere, he would have been stopped before he got past the first stoplight.
Okay, we're going to go over to vivabarneslaw.locals.com.
Yeah, we got the Federal Reserve. Have you ever had an argument with somebody about who owns the reserve banks? Well, a federal court just admitted it. Who really owns the Federal Reserve banks? Plus, an innocent man finally gets a little bit of justice in a federal court. DEI is going to DIE in the Twin Cities. California Coastal Commission gets their comeuppance. And the EU tells Italy they've got to put the asylum seekers on the dole, on the state taxpayer dole.
Sorry, I have to rub my nose and I don't want anyone to see it. All right, we're going to up. Robert, what do you have coming up this week?
So there may be some bourbons there'll definitely be bourbons later in the week. There'll be a live What Are the Odds Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, which is on People's Pundit Daily, Richard Barris's channel on Rumble, Locals, YouTube, Getter, and X. I may be live from Thomas Massie's district. I'll either be there or back home. Not sure. It depends on what other things are in flux as to where I'll be for that. But that will be live Tuesday night. Then Wednesday night, Thursday night, we'll have live bourbon with Barnes on vivabarneslaw.locals.com. We'll have some hush hushes forthcoming on weather weapons and some other things. Going to have some freedom classes upcoming. The Barnes Brief each day with some curated content of interesting stories and links across the webosphere. All that at vivabarneslaw.locals.com. Otherwise, Tuesday, What Are the Odds? Richard Barris, People's Pundit Daily, where we'll be breaking down live the Thomas Massey primary.
I'm a little nervous, but I'm super excited. We're going to go raid whatever right now. If you want to opt out, stick with us. If you're Rumble Premium, I'll be live daily all week, 3 o'clock, and tomorrow, Jeffrey Rath coming on. And we're going to take this party on over to the after party, and hopefully we don't have a glitch like we did last week, which was not my fault, people. Confirm raid. Enjoy whatever. It looks like debates with young ladies with tattoos and young men with facial hair. One of them looks like Robert Gouveia, but it's not. Okay, so hold on. Viva Raid Booyah. And now we're going to go over to Rumble Premium, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. And Godspeed, everyone. And the God blesses for our locals community. So we're updating now. Hold on. Okay.
Do people still see us?
I'm going to freak out. Do we still see us?